Chapter 1539. So Gu Xingyin didn't even bat an eyelid when she heard this. She looked at Audrey and said, "I'm a little soft-hearted." "Audrey, but that doesn't mean I'm stupid. You always think you're the smartest person in the world, but you're the one I can't see through the most." Audrey didn't want to argue with Gu Xingyin. After confirming that she couldn't take her back, she sat back down coldly. She even turned around and didn't want to look at Gu Xingyin. She said coldly, "You're going to be Marshal Raymond's wife soon. You're the winner, and I'm just the loser. So no matter what you say, you'll think you're right." Gu Xingyin saw that Audrey was still stubborn and didn't want to admit defeat, so she knew this conversation wouldn't work out. But she didn't come here to chat. She looked at Audrey and said, "Then just take it that I'm here to announce the good news. Audrey, I'm going to marry Kegel at the end of the year. He loves me very much, and I love him very much. We'll be very happy." Audrey suddenly raised her head and stared at her. "Why are you saying this to me?" She clearly knew that she would be like this for the rest of her life, but she still wanted to show off her happiness in front of her. Gu Xingyin chuckled, "Why? Just take it that I'm here to show off to you. Seeing that you're living so miserably and I'm so happy, I'm really happy in my heart." Although she said this, her tone and expression didn't show any arrogance, so it was hard to tell whether she was telling the truth or not. But Audrey obviously didn't have time to tell the truth. She just kept repeating Gu Xingyin's words in her mind. She was very happy, she was very happy, and she was very miserable. Ah! She suddenly hugged her head and cried out in pain. Almost at the same time, Raymond broke the door and walked to Gu Xingyin's side, subconsciously protecting her in his arms. Then he carefully checked to make sure he was fine. After that, he looked at Audrey. He didn't have a good impression of this woman. Seeing Audrey in pain, Raymond just asked casually, "What's wrong with her?" Gu Xingyin shook her head. "I just said a few words to her, and she became like this." The doctor in the prison came quickly. After examining Audrey's symptoms, it was determined that she had been overly stimulated and her spirit had become extremely unstable. But the doctor didn't think it had anything to do with Gu. After all, people like them who worked in prison would often encounter one or two mentally ill patients. Most of the time, they're mentals, they've been living in a semi-closed prison for a long. And this discomfort, once a breakthrough is. Audrey's symptoms were the most likely to appear. "What will happen to her?" Gu Xingyin asked. The doctor replied, "If the situation is good, he may be able to recover after a period of rest. If the situation is not good." He looked coldly at Audrey, who was hugging her head and shivering on the bed. "I'm afraid she'll be like this for the rest of her life." Gu Xingyin looked at Audrey, who was sitting on the bed. She was hugging her head with her hands, looking frightened and muttering something. Obviously, hers condition was very bad. Chapter 1540. Raymond didn't care about Audrey's life or death. In his eyes, it was fine as long as Deanna was fine. As for Audrey, a person who tried to hurt Deanna, even if she died immediately, Raymond wouldn't feel anything. It was ridiculous that Audrey tried to make Gu Xingyin say good things about her in front of Raymond. She didn't know that the person who wanted her dead more than Gu Xingyin was Raymond. Even if Gu Xingyin was persuaded by her, Raymond might not let her go. Why would Audrey be sentenced to such a severe punishment for murder? Audrey couldn't guess, but Gu Xingyin could faintly guess that Raymond must have something to do with it. "Let's go." Gu Xingyin's hand was held by Raymond. She looked up at him. The matter here was already over. She just asked the system. Audrey really wasn't pretending, she really couldn't bear it and broke down. In this case, there was no need for her to continue to stay here. Raymond tightened his grip on Gu Xingyin's hand. He originally thought that Gu Xingyin would be afraid, but it turned out that his little mermaid was very brave. The two went back from here. Gu Xingyin didn't look back. She knew that she wouldn't come here again in this life. She had dinner with Raymond, and then prepared to send Raymond back. When she returned home, she met the eyes of her 4 family members. It was rare that her second brother Jason was also home. However, compared to the other 3, he was more excited and happy. Seeing Gu Xingyin, he quickly asked, "Did you have a good time with Marshal Raymond? What's he like in private? Is he as cold and unapproachable as usual?" "Well, Jason, your sister just came back, let her rest for a while." Mrs. Casey looked at her youngest son with some helplessness. If Jason was a girl, she was afraid that he would fall in love with his future brother-in-law. Jason only reacted after hearing his mother's words. He smiled a little embarrassedly, quickly pulled Gu Xingyin to sit on the sofa, and politely handed her a plate of cut fruit. Speaking of which, besides Gu Xingyin, among the 4 of Leonard's family, Jason was the happiest about Gu Xingyin and Raymond being together. His most beloved sister and the marshal whom he admired the most would become a pair of partners. This was simply a matter that couldn't be any better. Gu Xingyin casually picked 2 things to tell her family. Leonard's family of 4 looked at her face. Even if they didn't feel good in their hearts, they still felt relieved. In any case, Marshal Raymond treated Deanna very well. The 2 of them had a good relationship. There was nothing more delightful than this. The next day, as soon as Gu Xingyin woke up, the communicator rang. Deanna, have you seen the hottest news on the star web?" Sophia's tone couldn't hide the excitement in her voice. Gu Xingyin covered her mouth and yawned a little. "What's wrong?" "I just woke up, I haven't seen it yet." Sophia didn't say anything, she just smiled mysteriously. "Did you go on a date with General Raymond yesterday?" Gu Xingyin was a little confused. How did Sophia know? She casually opened the star web. Then she knew why Sophia knew about this. Chapter 1541. Gu Xingyin looked at the large photo on the front page of Star Web, thinking that not only Sophia, but the entire Queso Empire should know that she went on a date with Raymond yesterday. That photo was of her and Raymond at the plaza in the central city yesterday. After Prince Jonathan left, the 2 of them spent some time together there. That was probably when the photo was taken. In the large photo at the very top, the handsome man lowered his eyes and carefully held the eyes of the girl in his arms with an extremely cherishing gesture. Such a gesture made the cold atmosphere around him seem to have softened. And the petite girl was held in the man's arms. Only half of her delicate and fair side profile was revealed in the camera. Her beautiful facial contours and long golden fan-like eyelashes could be seen. It was clearly just a candid photo, but the atmosphere between the 2 of them was so harmonious and beautiful. Gu Xingyin looked at the photo with appreciation for a while and found that she was very satisfied. The photographer's skill was pretty good. She continued to scroll down and saw a few more photos. She raised her head slightly and reached out to touch Raymond's face. Raymond, who never allowed others to step into his territory, indulged the girl's behavior almost to the point of indulgence. There was also the way the 2 of them interlocked fingers, and the way Raymond personally bought a drink and handed it to her. Gu Xingyin looked and couldn't help but laugh. So this was how it was when she interacted with him. She continued to scroll down and saw the netizens' comments. Daylily, "Holy shit, it's blinding my dog eyes. This definitely isn't the Honorable Marshal Raymond I know." Blue, "I agree with the previous poster. This definitely isn't the Honorable Marshal Raymond I know." Blue and white porcelain, "This is the rumored tempered finger softness, right? It looks so blissful. The sofa is mine, so the Honorable Marshal also has such a gentle appearance. The interaction between the 2 is so warm. The Marshal really dotes on his wife. A cup of water is not water, although this photo is beautiful, the angle of the photo is bad. Can you let me see the Marshal's wife's complete appearance? Although it's only half of her face, I seem to see a peerless beauty. Lick screen a beauty in my arms, absolute beauty +1. Also, the person above, good luck to you. How dare you lick the beauty of the marshal's wife? Scoundrels like us can only look up. A roll of toilet paper, admiring the beauty of the marshal's wife. In addition, light a candle for the screen licking above, ha 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 ha. Gu Xingyin flipped through a few pages with great interest. As expected, Raymond's popularity was not just for show. The message had only been posted for less than half an hour, but there were already more than 100,000 comments. What kind of terrifying speed was this? No wonder he was called the nation's Prince Charming. Hey, Diana, are you still there? Sophia's voice came from the other end of the communicator. Gu Xingyin replied, yes, I'm reading the news you mentioned. Speaking of this, Sophia became excited. My God, let me tell you, Diana, your family's Marshal Raymond is really too handsome. A cold, domineering, and aloof Prince Charming is actually so gentle and doting on you. Oh my God, just thinking about it makes my heart melt. You don't know, Gu Xingyin listened to Sophia's long speech helplessly. She knew that this girl could talk for 10 minutes if she was in a good mood. She even took the opportunity to wash up. When she came back, Sophia was still talking. Chapter 1542. Let me tell you, Diana, you have to keep an eye on your family's Prince Charming Raymond. You didn't see the comments below. Even though you know he has a fiancée, there are still a lot of merfolk who are willing to give birth to his children. Sophia was obviously very excited. Gu Xingyin timely interrupted, don't worry, Sophia. I'm confident that he'll only love me. Sophia didn't say anything for a long time after hearing her words. After a long while, she said. I'm convinced. Diana, you've changed too. Now you open your mouth and spread dog food. My fragile little heart can't take it anymore. Gu Xingyin laughed, I have to teach Earl Allen these words. Sophia instantly fell silent. After a while, Sophia said, say, Marshal Raymond should also know about this, right? I wonder what his reaction will be if he finds out he's been photographed. Gu Xingyin thought to herself, he'll probably be very happy. She understood this man. He should be eager to announce their relationship to the entire empire in a high-profile manner, to tell everyone that she belonged to him. No matter how many worlds he had experienced, his possessiveness had never changed. Moreover, take today's photos as an example. Without Raymond's permission, the Star Web would never dare to put up their photos without his permission. It was just that she couldn't say these words to Sophia. She could only vaguely reply, I don't know. Sophia was obviously dissatisfied with this answer, but with her understanding of Gu Xingyin, she probably knew that she had just woken up. You're up and go eat early. See you at school this afternoon. The two of them were already adults. There was still one semester left in the merfolk school. Gu Xingyin had been staying at home ever since she was injured because of Audrey. No matter what, she had to go to school today. Okay, see you this afternoon. Gu Xingyin walked downstairs. Her parents and eldest brother were all there. Only her second brother was nowhere to be seen. He had obviously gone to the army. The three of them sat at the dining table and looked at Gu Xingyin with a hesitant expression. Gu Xingyin picked up the milk product and took a sip. If you have anything to ask, just say it. Cough. Mrs. Casey was the first to speak. She looked at her daughter. Yesterday, you went to the shopping mall in the city center with Marshal Raymond? Gu Xingyin put down the cup in his hand and looked at her helplessly. Mom, don't be so careful. I saw the news. It's true. A smile appeared on Mrs. Cassie's face. Anyone could see the deep affection between the two from the photos. They could also see the tenderness and care General Raymond had for the girl in his arms. Mrs. Casey had to admit that even though she was a mother of 3 children, she couldn't help but feel her heart fluttering when she saw those photos. She thought that at this moment, All the unmarried mermaids in the Empire were probably wishing that she was the happy girl in Marshal Raymond's arms. Her impression of Marshal Raymond had also improved qualitatively in an instant. He had a good family background, he was capable, he was handsome, and he cherished Diana so much. What was there to be picky about with such a son-in-law? Even the other two men in the family who were originally dissatisfied with Raymond were completely speechless. Chapter 1543. Mermaid School. A hover car stopped here. Today was the end of the school's monthly holiday. Naturally, many mermaids would be sent to school by their families. Uncle Jack was sitting in his small recliner, squinting his eyes leisurely in the sun. Suddenly, he noticed that the hairs on his body were standing on end. This was the sign of encountering a top expert. Uncle Jack pretended that nothing had happened and turned his head to take a look. However, this glance stunned him. Under an ordinary-looking hover car, the man who came out was a face that no one in the Empire would be unfamiliar with. Raymond got out of the car and personally opened the door for Gu Xingyin. In fact, with current technology, the door could be opened automatically. But Raymond liked this kind of etiquette, which originated from the ancient Blue Star era. He felt that this could better reflect the importance he attached to his fiancée. Uncle Jack looked at the mermaid who came out of the car. Oh, it was Diana, who often greeted him and loved to smile. Right, she seemed to be Marshal Raymond's fiancée. Old Jack continued to lie back, slowly thinking about the news he had seen a few days ago. It was said that the Raymond family had been preparing for a long time. They would wait until Diana graduated, and then the two would get married. Due to the school rules of the mermaid school, Raymond did not enter the school. Old Jack could hear that he was telling the little mermaid something. Old Jack smiled knowingly. Young people, they had just been together, and it was inevitable that they would be reluctant to part. He could completely understand. Didn't he and the old woman go through the same thing in the past? Raymond finished what he was going to tell them. He leaned over and gently planted a kiss on Gu Xingyin's forehead. I'll pick you up at the end of the month. Since the news, the Leonard family had completely accepted this son-in-law, and Raymond had basically taken over the matter of picking up and sending Gu Xingyin. This could also be regarded as cultivating feelings. Then, old Jack heard the girl's cheerful voice, Grandpa Jack, good afternoon. Old Jack smiled and waved at her, watching the girl's figure walk away. He inadvertently turned around and saw the marshal standing quietly at the school gate. His eyes were fixed on the white figure. It seemed that he would not leave until the person disappeared from his sight. Raymond seemed to have noticed old Jack's gaze as he glanced at him. He didn't say anything and only nodded slightly. Old Jack only grinned. A girl who was polite and kind would always have good luck. Old Jack mumbled to himself. Diana and the marshal would be very happy. Time passed quickly. The days at the mermaid school were no different from usual. If there was a difference, it was that everyone knew that this was the last time they would be together. When the students met, they would smile at each other and occasionally have a meal together. Their relationship was much better than before. There were also some who were more mature and had already begun to learn how to socialize within the family. For example, Gu Xingyin, the wife of the future marshal, became the target that everyone wanted to curry favor with. Gu Xingyin felt a little sad about this change, but she knew that it was unavoidable. With her status, there was no need for her to consider so many things. It was better for them to continue their relationship as usual. For those who were only acquaintances, it was still better to be indifferent to them. Chapter 1544. The Mermaid School. The teachers watched as the students said goodbye to them one by one. They had been here for many years. After a while, they would have to go through such a farewell. It was a cycle. Although they were used to it, they still couldn't hide their sadness when it came to such a moment. After Gu Xingyin said goodbye to all her teachers, classmates, and friends, she walked to the man standing behind her. This day was the only time that outsiders were allowed to enter the school. The robots had already packed up everything and went home. Gu Xingyin only needed to leave with Raymond. Voices could be heard from behind him. Quite a few people had already recognized Redmond. Gu Xingyin couldn't help but sigh. With a fiancé like you, I really don't feel safe. I'm going to become the love rival of the whole empire. Raymond shook her hand, apparently amused by her words. He lowered his head, and his warm breath entered her ear. You have no love rival, Diana. My heart will always beat for you. Gu Xingyin couldn't help but twitch her ears. She looked behind her and saw two mermaids looking at her with red faces. For a moment, she couldn't help but feel proud. So what if they were the love rivals of the empire? No matter how many people were jealous, they could only watch. Raymond looked at Gu Xingyin with a smile. She didn't hide her expression at all. He could easily see through her thoughts at the moment. It was obvious that her thoughts pleased him. The next step was to send Gu Xingyin home. When they got out of the car, Raymond suddenly grabbed Gu Xingyin's hand. Gu Xingyin looked at him with some confusion. Raymond looked at her deeply, his eyes full of joy. Diana, my little mermaid. Very soon, you will become mine. Gu Xingyin knew what he meant. According to the agreement between the two families, their wedding should begin soon. The Raymond family and the Leonard family. One had power, the other had money. The combination of these two families was the wedding of the century. The eager citizens of the empire finally saw the bride's full face on the live broadcast of the Star Web. As a result, the comments below changed from "Lucky Mermaid, Marshall, I'm willing to give birth to your child," to a large wave of "Beautiful mermaids are all other people's, Marshall Raymond is so lucky, the angelic Marshall's wife." Interspersed with the comments. After the wedding, the live broadcast site actually received millions of comments. There were even people of the Imperium who were arguing over whether the Marshal was lucky or the Marshal's wife was lucky. The flames of war were much fiercer than the fights between the fans of the Empire's stars. However, none of this affected Raymond and Gu Xingyin. Raymond held Gu Xingyin's hand firmly and placed a resplendent gemstone ring on her finger. I hope to use this ring to encircle you for the rest of your life, he said softly in her ear. Gu Xingyin smiled and didn't say anything. She also took the ring in her hand and firmly put it on Raymond's finger. Then, she motioned for Raymond to lower his head. Raymond obediently did as he was told. Then, Gu Xingyin tiptoed and whispered the same thing into his ear. I'm greedy. I hope to use this ring to encircle you for the rest of your life. Chapter 1545. Ever since he was born, Dinok Raymond had been favored by the heavens. He was the heir of the Raymond family. His father was the leader of the Casso Empire's military. His mother was from the richest family in the capital, the Leonard family. Needless to say, since Dinok was born, his physical attributes could be said to be perfect. Plus, he had inherited all the good points of his parents. Anyone who saw Dinok for the first time would say that he was like an angel from the ancient Blue Planet's records. But Dinok always had a little secret in his heart. He felt that his father didn't like him. Why? Every time his mother wanted to hug and kiss him, his father would stand up and sternly say, "The men of the Raymond family can't be coquettish. They can't be spoiled." Actually, he really liked his mother's soft and fragrant hugs. Little Dinok felt wronged. One day, he climbed up the fake mountain in the family's garden to think about life. Then, he accidentally fell asleep. He didn't know that his disappearance had turned the entire Raymond family upside down. He saw the family's servants looking for him in a hurry. And his father, who was always calm and indifferent, had a rare anxious expression on his face. He was worried about him. Dinok suddenly felt warm in his heart. Then, he climbed out of the fake mountain. If time could turn back, little Dinok swore that he would never climb out before his mother came home. Because when his worried father saw him, the anxiety on his face disappeared and was replaced with his usual coldness. The little guy instinctively felt that something was wrong and wanted to run. But how could he outrun his father? Dinok's but blossomed. When Gu Xingyin came back at night, Dinok had already cried himself to sleep. In a daze, he seemed to hear his parents talking. Such a small child, how could you be so cruel? The gentle voice was his mother's, but it had a trace of complaint. Then, his father's voice sounded. It was different from the coldness of the day. When talking to his mother, his father's voice was always very gentle. Diana, I can't be lax with Dinok. He is the eldest son of the Raymond family. In the future, he'll have to shoulder the entire Redmond family. He'll have to hold up the sky for his mother. He'll have to protect his younger siblings from the storm, and he'll also have to deal with the conflicts and threats from the outside world. If we spoil him now, we'll be harming him in the future. His mother's low voice could be heard, I know, but such a small child. I feel uncomfortable just looking at him. Her father's calm voice seemed to be comforting her. Our son can do it. Dinok is my pride and joy. He is also the child that I have poured my heart and soul into teaching. He has never let me down. He will be the strongest man in the empire in the future. Dinok didn't hear the rest of the sentence clearly as he fell asleep again. However, the stone that had been pressing down on his heart all this time suddenly disappeared. He was his father's pride and his mother's protection. So it wasn't that his father didn't like him. As Dinok fell into a deep slumber, he couldn't help but smile. He dreamed that he had become the most powerful man in the empire, even more powerful than his father. He would become the pillar of the Raymond family, just as his father had hoped. Chapter 1546. This was a story that couldn't be more ridiculous. The original owner, Zhong Yuji, lived in a very happy family. Her family was rich, but her parents' relationship was very good. They didn't have the disputes of other rich families. Zhong Yuji graduated from a famous university. She had a boyfriend with a good family background. Her boyfriend was very good to her. Zhong Yuji used herself as an example to tell others what it meant to be a winner in life. However, a car accident tore off all the concealment. Her mother's bones were not cold yet, and her father couldn't wait to bring a woman home. That woman also brought a daughter who was the same age as Zhong Yuji. And one. Zhong Yuji couldn't accept that her mother had just passed away for less than a month, and her father was preparing to remarry. She made a big fuss at home, but her father, who always loved her, scolded her. The woman who was brought home had a gentle temperament. She always stood softly by the side and never interfered in the matters between the father and daughter. And that one, like her mother, just stood on the side quietly. This attitude made her father feel that his daughter, who he had carefully raised, was actually so vulgar. This was not the biggest blow to Zhong Yuji. The most desperate thing was that once she woke up late and didn't go out. She just happened to hear her father and that woman talking. And when was the child of that woman and her father? What husband and wife love, the model of a rich family, it was all a joke. Her father, since they got married, loved someone else. He even had a child with another woman not long after he and her mother got married. She couldn't hold back and stood out to question them. In the end, her father only felt a little unnatural. After that, he said that he wanted An to acknowledge her ancestors. He actually wanted to acknowledge that illegitimate daughter. No, perhaps in his heart, An, this illegitimate daughter, was even more precious than his own daughter. Zhong Yuji ran out angrily. At this time, the only person she could think of was her boyfriend, Zhong Cheng. But when she drove to Zhong Cheng's apartment, what she saw was him hugging and kissing another woman. Gu Xingyi knew that woman. She was her good sister, and won. Her mother stole her mother's husband, and now, she came to steal her boyfriend. Zhong Yuji didn't even have the strength to question them. She leaned on the steering wheel and cried. But she didn't expect that a drunk driver would rush over. When Zhong Yuji died, she was still in a daze. This time, those bitches were really lucky. She couldn't accept it. Gu Xingyin silently looked at the plot of this world. She was simply disgusted. This world was simply a concentration camp for scums. Regardless of whether it was the two-faced father, the mother and daughter who entered the house, or Zhong Cheng who cheated on his girlfriend. All of them were the best. She scanned her surroundings and found herself in an elegantly decorated room. He was wearing pajamas and had a slight headache. It should be the after-effects of sleeping late. She looked at the time, it was 9:30 in the morning. Gu Xingyin rubbed his forehead and dragged his sore body to the bathroom. After washing up, he felt much more refreshed. She raised her head, looked at the girl. Chapter 1547. She had a good appearance and temperament. But she looked a little pale. Gu Xingyin compared Zhong Yuji's memory. Her mother had just left, and her father brought someone else back. She didn't have a good rest during this time. No wonder she looked so pale. She tidied herself up, pushed the door open and walked out. Yan, you know that Rua just left. If I announce your and Wenwen's identity at this time, the woman standing in front of her father was obviously crying. But I followed you for no reason. I've been here for so many years. But what about Wenwen? She'll be laughed at by others. Gu Xingyin sneered in her heart. Now you know you'll be laughed at by others. Aren't you and your mother a joke for a long time? Then she heard her father's comforting voice. Yan, don't worry. Wenwen is my daughter. I won't let her be wronged. In the original plot, Zhong Yuji couldn't help but rush over to question the two when she heard this. But Gu Xingyin thought that Gu Xingyin was making a scene now. It was not a good thing for her. She recorded this quietly and then went back to her room. After a while, she walked out of the room again. This time, she saw the two people sitting on the sofa in the living room politely. Yuji, you didn't go out today? Father Chong asked. After graduation, Chong Yuji opened a fashion design studio with several of her friends. Usually, she would go there at this time. Gu Xingyin answered, I don't feel well. I won't go today. At this time, the woman sitting aside didn't speak. She called Yuji weakly. Gu Xingyin pretended she didn't hear it. She raised her wrist and looked at the watch. She said to Father Chong, I'll go out first. Father Chong didn't know what he wanted to prove in front of that woman. His face suddenly darkened. Your auntie An is greeting you. Chong Yuji, where's your upbringing? Gu Xingyin's face also turned cold. I don't remember my mother having any siblings. Where did this aunt come from? She tilted her head and looked at the woman sitting on the sofa who seemed to be at a loss. My mother hasn't even passed away for 100 days, and you can't wait to welcome such a person into the house. I don't care if you want to raise this plaything, but if you want me to treat it respectfully like an elder, no way. Her expression was filled with endless resentment. She's just a shameless woman. Who does she think she is? The blood drained from An Yan's face after hearing those words. In fact, she had seen Chong Yuji's mother many years ago. At that time, Chong Yuji's mother was still a high and mighty young lady. She lived wantonly and ostentatiously. When she saw Chong Yuji, she also looked at her with disdain. Now, more than 20 years had passed, and her daughter was still looking at her with the same gaze. Her fingernails dug into her palms as she told herself to endure. She had endured for more than 20 years. What did she rely on to stay with Chong Mingang all the time? Wasn't she gentle and considerate? Now she finally killed Chong Mingang's first wife. Wasn't she just a spoiled young lady in her 20s? She could still trample her under her feet. Chapter 1548. So she didn't say anything when she heard that. She just sat on the sofa with a pale face and cried silently. In Chong Ming-gang's eyes, this made his heart ache. In his heart, this woman had been a mistress for more than 20 years. Now that his wife had died, he wanted to take her back. What was wrong with that? Why did Yuji become like this? Didn't she understand his difficulties as a father at all? But Chong Ming-gang had never thought about how much he had done to his deceased wife and innocent daughter. How much he had gone overboard. He glared at Gu Xingyin and said, "What are you talking about? Why don't you apologize to Antian?" Gu Xingyin knew that Chong Ming-gang didn't dare to do anything to Zhong Yuji. Zhong Yuji's mother, Lu Qinghe, was the daughter of the Lu family. The Lu family was more powerful than the Chongming family in the capital. He couldn't wait to take An Yen and her daughter back after Lu Qinghe died. This already made the Lu family very unhappy. If there were rumors that he treated Zhong Yuji badly, the Lu family would make trouble. Gu Xingyin knew this, so she directly talked to An Yen. She just wanted to let this woman know that even if she married into the Zhong family, so what? She couldn't get what she shouldn't get. Gu Xingyin slowly tidied up her hair and said to her father, "Father, if you don't want me to say something worse, don't provoke me. I will never be able to live in peace with this woman." After saying that, she walked out of the door, completely ignoring how angry her father was behind her. To say something unfilial, that kind of man wouldn't shed a tear even if he was angered to death. After Gu Xingyin left, An Yen covered her mouth and burst into tears as if she could not hold it in any longer. Women like her knew what kind of crying could make a man pity her the most. Sure enough, her father quickly began to comfort her. "Ah Yen, don't be sad. Yuji has been spoiled by me and her mother since she was young. She has a bad temper. Don't take her words seriously," An Yen sneered in her heart, but her face was full of sorrow. "I really didn't know. Yuji, she actually hates me so much. Otherwise, I just moved back." Although she said this, she was certain that Chong Ming-gang would definitely not agree. If she really moved out, wouldn't it mean that he, the head of the family, actually compromised with his daughter? For a man like Chong Ming-gang who cared a lot about his reputation, this was absolutely intolerable. As expected, Chong Ming-gang immediately got angry. "Don't mention this again. Don't worry, Ah Yen, with me here, no one will dare to make you leave this house." An Yen was so touched that she snuggled into his arms. Gu Xingyin didn't even let the system monitor what happened after that. She didn't even need to think to know what the two of them would talk about. She didn't want the system to tell her anything to disgust her. She didn't go to her own fashion design studio. Instead, she drove to her boyfriend Zhong Cheng's apartment. Zhong Yuji and Zhong Cheng could be considered as close friends. They were recognized as a golden couple. In the eyes of outsiders, Zhong Cheng loved his girlfriend Zhong Yuji like a treasure. Like a treasure? He loved his girlfriend like a treasure, but in the blink of an eye, he was with another woman. Gu Xingyin sneered. And one was her mission target. But she never thought that this woman would be a threat to her. Because she still had a big secret in her hands. Chapter 1549. The big secret was that An Wen wasn't Zhong Ming-gang's daughter at all. To be honest, Gu Xingyin was shocked when she knew about it. Zhong Ming-gang treated the mother and daughter as his treasures and was touched that An Yen stayed outside for more than 20 years for him and raised his daughter alone. But he didn't know that An Wen had already cheated on him more than 20 years ago. In the original plot, after Zhong Yuji died in a car accident, the Lu family couldn't take it anymore and directly went to question Zhong Ming-gang. At that time, they expressed their doubts about An Wen's identity, and Zhong Ming-gang naturally denied it. But the Lu family had always been tough, and they directly dragged An Wen to do a paternity test. The result was completely out of everyone's expectations, and Wan and Yen were not related. When Gu Xingyin saw this, she was even curious about the expression on Zhong Minggang's face at that time. She always thought that the lover who treated her with all his heart actually had an affair with someone else long ago, and even the child wasn't hers. Thinking of this, she couldn't help but laugh. No matter what, she was happy as long as this kind of person was unhappy. Soon, they arrived at Zhong Cheng's apartment. As a typical rich second generation, Zhong Cheng's apartment was located in a high-end residential area in the city. Gu Xingyin parked the car by the side and walked towards the destination. Before she arrived downstairs, she saw the young man and woman who were pulling each other. The two seemed to be arguing about something. The woman was more emotional, and the man was softly coaxing something. Anyone who saw it would think that this was a young couple who was at odds with each other, not a man with a fiancée and his fiancée's illegitimate sister. Gu Xingyin continued to walk forward as if she didn't see it. Zhong Cheng and Anwen were both emotional and didn't notice her at all. When Gu Xingyin was almost beside the two of them, Anwen said something and Zhong Cheng pulled her into his arms and kissed her passionately. Gu Xingyin saw this scene and stopped to think for a while. Fortunately, Zhong Cheng had always been the one who took the initiative in the relationship between Zhong Yuji and Zhong Cheng. Zhong Yuji didn't even know whether she was more dependent on him or more in love with him. The two of them hadn't reached the final step yet. Otherwise, Gu Xingyin herself would feel disgusted at the thought of such a man. Anwen resisted at first, but after struggling for a while, she went completely limp in Zhong Cheng's arms. Seeing that she was finally appeased, Zhong Cheng finally breathed a sigh of relief. He raised his head and was about to say something to Anwen when he sensed that something was wrong. They turned around and saw that Gu Xingyin was looking at them with a faint smile on his face, only 4 or 5 steps away from them. Yuji. Why was she here? Zhong Cheng's heart skipped a beat. He then saw that Gu Xingyin was playing with a mobile phone. She had even taken a picture of him and Anwen's actions. Seeing Gu Xingyin like this, Zhong Cheng was a little flustered. When he saw that he was still hugging Anwen, he quickly pushed her away as if he was scalded. Anwen was pushed so suddenly that she almost fell to the ground. Zhong Cheng, what are you doing? Anwen couldn't help complaining. When she raised her head, she saw that Zhong Cheng was looking at a certain direction anxiously. She raised her head subconsciously and saw the woman she hated most in her life. Chapter 1550. Zhong Yuji. If someone gave Anwen a gun to let her kill a person without any criminal responsibility, there was no doubt that she would shoot Zhong Yuji. From the moment she entered the Zhong family, Zhong Yuji had never looked her in the eye. She always looked at Anwen with a sneer in her eyes. She looked at Anwen as if she was looking at a bug that couldn't be exposed to the light. Anwen was flustered when she saw Zhong Yuji. But after the reflexive panic passed, she calmed down and even felt a little secret complacency. Look, your boyfriend was in my arms just now. She wanted to see Zhong Yuji's arrogant face being torn apart. At the thought of this, she slowly straightened her body and still had the strength to tidy up her messy hair. She called out to Gu Xingyin in a gentle voice. Gu Xingyin didn't pay attention to her at all. She just looked at Zhong Cheng with a sneer. Don't you want to explain? Seeing that she was ignored, Anwen was so angry that she gritted her teeth. You are so cruel. Zhong Yuji, one day, I will tear your arrogant face into pieces by myself. Zhong Cheng was flustered in his heart. He had known Zhong Yuji for so many years. It would be a lie to say that he had no feelings for her. Besides, after so many years, even if it was fake, he had pretended to be sincere. Besides, Zhong Yuji had a good family background, a good appearance, and a good temperament. In all aspects, she was much better than Anwen, who wanted to stay with her mother. Without hesitation, he blurted out, Yuji, believe me. I've been blinded by greed all this time. I just played with her. The one I like is still you. And one, who was also waiting for his answer, almost broke her teeth when she heard that. Played. It turned out that in Zhong Cheng's heart, those sweet words and intimate interactions were just for fun. Her eyes became cold. Sure enough, her mother was right. Men were all cheap bones. What they said could never be taken seriously. Her expression was noticed by Gu Xingyin, who noticed it from the corner of her eye. She looked at Zhong Cheng without batting an eyelid. Play. Hearing her tone, Zhong Cheng thought that she was still hesitating. At this moment, he only wanted to please Gu Xingyin and make her believe his words. It was not easy to find such a good girlfriend. Chong Yuji was Chong Ming Gang's only daughter. If there were no accidents in the future, the Chong family's business would be hers. Moreover, her grandfather was from the Liu family. If the Zhong family could get the support of the Liu family in the future, thinking about how the Chong family had grown in just a few decades, Zhong Cheng's heart burned with passion. He definitely had to coax Yuji. Thinking of this, Zhong Cheng hurriedly nodded, "That's right, Yuji. You know that I've always only had you in my heart. I'm really just playing with her. Think about it. How can an unpresentable daughter of a mistress be compared to you?" Gu Xingyin looked at An Wen's pale face with satisfaction. This feeling isn't bad, right? An Wen. The man who tried so hard to snatch from me only treated you as a plaything to play with. She was too lazy to tear it up herself, because she knew that someone would tear it up for her. Gu Xingyin, who had seen enough of the drama, withdrew her gaze and looked at Zhong Cheng, who was looking at her with expectation. Under Zhong Cheng's gaze, she said slowly, "Oh, you're just playing with her. What does that have to do with me?" Chapter 1551. Gu Xingyin coldly looked at Zhong Cheng, who was looking at her in disbelief. She smiled coldly. "Whether you really love her or play with her, what does it have to do with me?" Zhong Cheng felt bad. He still wanted to say something to save the situation, but Gu Xingyin didn't want to give him another chance. "Zhong Cheng, do you think that after I see this kind of thing, you can easily apologize and this matter will be over?" Gu Xingyin stared at his face with sarcasm. "Zhong Cheng, I'm not so cheap." After saying that, she turned around and looked at An Wen, who was standing aside obediently with her head down. This woman should be secretly happy when she heard what she said just now, right? Gu Xingyin looked at her impatiently. "And you, An Wen. Your mother is shameless to be the third party in other people's marriage. As a daughter, you have got the essence of her and come to steal my boyfriend." She took 2 steps toward An Wen. Under her aggressive momentum, An Wen couldn't help but take 2 steps back. Gu Xingyin saw this and stopped. "However, An Wen, do you really think that Zhong Cheng will marry you in the future after being with you? Don't be too naive. Sometimes, a person should know her own identity. What the Zhong family needs is a daughter-in-law who can help their family to a higher level, not a..." Gu Xingyin looked at her from head to toe and smiled ambiguously. "You don't even know your father, a burden." An Wen's face turned pale. She suddenly raised her head and stared at Gu Xingyin. She stared at her and said, "Shut up. Zhong Yuji, shut up." The problem of her birth had always been her pain. She didn't know who her father was since she was a child. When she was a child, she also asked her mother and even resented her. But no matter what, she couldn't escape that she was born out of wedlock and didn't even have a father. Seeing her like this, Gu Xingyin really didn't continue. She turned her head to look at Zhong Cheng, who was standing motionlessly at the side, and sneered, "Look, this is the man you found. Even if I trample you to death here, believe it or not, he won't have the guts to come out and stop me." An Wen's mouth moved, but she couldn't refute. Yes, if she had a conflict with Zhong Yuji now, according to what Zhong Cheng said just now, it was hard to say who he would help. An Wen suddenly felt powerless. However, Gu Xingyin glanced at the two of them and said, however, I'm in a good mood today. I wish you all the best. May you be infertile and have many children and grandchildren. After she finished speaking, she did not pay any attention to the two people behind her who were dumbstruck and resentful, and slowly left. No one noticed that in a car not far from here, someone had seen this scene from beginning to end. The man looked at the back of the leaving figure, and then looked at the two people who were standing there awkwardly. I remember that second brother seems to have a cooperation with the Zhong family. His face was hidden in the shadow, so it couldn't be seen clearly. But judging from the voice, the owner of the voice was very young. Another person in the car answered, yes, third master. He didn't speak again, and the black car left quietly. Anwen took the lead to break the silence between the two people. She thought for a while and felt that since she had offended Zhong Yuji, she couldn't leave Zhong Qing behind. Chapter 1552. Anwen stammered as she looked at Zhong Qing. Her eyes were filled with endless grievances. Zhong Qing had been standing there in a daze. Only now did he come back to his senses. He looked at Anwen, who was approaching him, and he couldn't help but take 2 steps back. The way he looked at Anwen was as if he was looking at something dirty. Don't come over. He looked at Anwen with disgust. Tell me, did you do it on purpose? Did you deliberately approach me to destroy the relationship between Yuji and me? Zhong Qing regretted it very much. If he had known earlier, he would have held back before Anwen approached him. No matter what, he couldn't cause any trouble before he got married. He knew about the Chong family. Of course, he also knew about Anwen's identity. Originally, he didn't like Anwen at all in his heart, but this woman was sensible and had a gentle personality. She could satisfy his masculine desires very well. In this aspect, Zhong Yuji, who had always grown up like a rich young lady, couldn't compare. Therefore, Zhong Qing thought that since Yuji didn't know, he would play with Anwen. When they were about to get married, he would break up with her. However, he didn't know that there was a kind of woman who couldn't be broken up with when you wanted to. Moreover, Anwen's purpose was not simply to be a mistress who couldn't see the light of day. Anwen looked at Zhong Qing in disbelief. It was as if at this moment, she really saw Zhong Qing's true colors. Although she had some thoughts of seducing this man to get close to him. However, this kind of thing couldn't be done with a slap. When nothing happened, he was obedient to her. However, when Zhong Yuji came, he threw all the responsibility to her. Listening to the meaning of Zhong Qing's words, he wanted to cut ties with her. How could there be such a beautiful thing in the world? Anwen sneered in her heart, but on the surface, she pretended to be helpless. Tears rolled down from her pale face. Hearing Zhong Qing's words, she couldn't help shaking her head. No. It's not like that. I've never thought of coming between you and elder sister Yuji. Anwen cried and said, I know my identity and I know that it's impossible for me to marry you. I just want to stay by your side. Zhong Qing, I love you. Even if I don't have a status, I'm willing to be with you. Zhong Qing looked at Anwen suspiciously, but he couldn't tell that she was lying. Such a delicate and pretty beauty was crying in front of him, yet she didn't forget to confess to him. No man would be able to harden his heart. Not to mention Zhong Qing, who had an ambiguous relationship with Anwen. Zhong Qing's expression finally eased. However, he still said, let's not be together anymore. He looked at Anwen's widened eyes and felt bad for her. However, when he thought about how Heavy Rain had left in a rage, he felt that he should know what was important. You know, I've loved Yuji for so many years, and I've always treated her as my future wife. I can't let go of her. Anwen was dumbfounded by these words. This man said that he was deeply in love with Heavy Rain, but behind her back, he kept having all kinds of lovers. Was this the so-called love? Although Anwen hated Heavy Rain, at this moment, she actually had a trace of sympathy for her in her heart. Look, your boyfriend is such a scumbag. If Gu Xingyin knew her thoughts, she would definitely correct her. No, please pay attention to your words. That scumbag is not my boyfriend anymore. Don't push all the blame on me. Chapter 1553. Gu Xingyin wandered outside for a day. When she returned home, she found Zhongqing sitting on the sofa and chatting enthusiastically with Chongming. Chongming had a smile on his face. He was obviously very satisfied with Zhongqing. Seeing Gu Xingyin return, Chongming acted as if nothing had happened in the morning. He said, "You child, Zhongqing is already here. Why didn't you come back earlier to accompany your boyfriend?" Gu Xingyin glanced at Zhongqing's face. It seemed that Zhongqing didn't tell Chongming about that matter at all. She really didn't understand this man's thoughts. Could it be that he was so naive to think that there was still a possibility between them? Gu Xingyin looked at An Yen, who was busy at the side. She poured herself a glass of water and said, "I forgot to tell Dad that Zhongqing and I broke up." When Chongming heard this, his smile disappeared. He frowned and said, "What happened?" He turned to look at Zhongqing. Zhongqing's expression was a little awkward. He said to Chongming, "There's some misunderstanding between Yuji and me." Chongming wasn't stupid. Looking at this, he knew that something must have happened to Zhongqing. However, he had always been quite satisfied with Zhongqing, this prospective son-in-law. The Zhong family had a good background and had many collaborations with the Zhong family in some fields. If the two families could unite by marriage, it would be a good thing for both of them. Gu Xingyin slowly sat down on another sofa. "Please pay attention to your words, Mr. Zhongqing. There's no misunderstanding between us. I saw it clearly with my own eyes." Chongming felt that his daughter's attitude was a little aggressive. He said unhappily, "Yuji, it's normal for young couples to have small problems. Look at Zhongqing's good attitude. You should try to talk to him. There's nothing that can't be solved." Gu Xingyin placed the cup in her hand heavily on the glass coffee table. She looked at Chongming with a mocking expression. "Father, aren't you going to ask me why I broke up with him? Or should I say that no matter what he did to me, as long as he is the young master of the Zhong family, I have to forgive him and then rob him of a happy marriage?" She finally knew that there were some people that you didn't have to give them any face at all. Otherwise, they would really be able to whitewash the situation and pretend that nothing had happened. Chongming felt that his daughter had been going overboard recently. In the past, Yuji was not so rebellious. His face darkened. "Is this how you talk to your father?" Unfortunately, Gu Xingyin was not afraid of him at all. She smiled and said, "Do you know what I saw when I went out to look for him today?" She reached out and pointed at Zhongqing. Zhongming looked at Zhongqing suspiciously. He still understood his daughter. If it wasn't something that she couldn't tolerate, her reaction wouldn't be so big. Gu Xingyin's tone was nonchalant. "My boyfriend and that woman, and one, are locked in a kiss." Zhongqing was completely embarrassed. He forced a smile and said, "Yuji, we don't have to do this here, please call me Miss Chong." Gu Xingyin interrupted him. "Don't make it seem like we're very familiar with each other." Chongming face also turned green and white. If it was an ordinary affair, it would be fine, but the object of the affair was An One. Chapter 1554. Chongming knew how much Gu Xingyin disliked the An family's mother and daughter. No wonder she had such a big reaction. This Zhongqing was really something. He clearly knew that An One was Yuji's sister in name, but he couldn't help but glare at Zhongqing. Zhongqing smiled bitterly. He knew that in this world, there was no father who could tolerate his daughter being treated like this. That was why he came early today, hoping to leave a good impression in Chongming's heart. However, If Gu Xingyin didn't cooperate, nothing could be discussed. Gu Xingyin felt that this man was really despicable. She had already said it so clearly, but Zhong Cheng could still act like this. This man, didn't he know how to write the word shame? Taking a step back, even if Zhong Cheng was shameless and dared to appear in the Zhong family, Gu Xingyin didn't have the time to waste on him. She stood up directly. I'll say it again. You and I are over. There's no possibility. Don't come to the Zhong family anymore. I feel disgusted just looking at you. Zhong Cheng's expression became very ugly. He felt that he had already put down his face and dignity to beg Gu Xingyin for forgiveness. But this woman really didn't give him any face at all. She even embarrassed him in front of his uncle. Chong Minggang also felt that his daughter's words were a bit too much. Yuji. He shouted her name loudly, indicating for Gu Xingyin to restrain herself. Gu Xingyin ignored him and turned to look at Zhong Cheng. Do you find my words unpleasant? Then you have two choices. First, get lost from my side. I won't be able to see you, so I'll be in a good mood and won't scold you. Second, go find your gentleman lover, right? For a woman like her, no matter what you do, she will still love you tenderly. She glanced at An Yen, who had been cleaning the stairs, and sneered. Mother and daughter are the same. They don't feel comfortable if they don't seduce other people's men. You. Chong Minggang was furious. He raised his hand high, as if he wanted to slap her. Gu Xingyin was not afraid at all. Father, you find my words unpleasant and want to teach me a lesson. I didn't say a single word of falsehood from beginning to end. How long had it been since his mother left and this woman had already entered the Zhong family? If you want to hit me, fine, hit me with all your might. I'm going to my uncle's house tomorrow. I'll let them see how you beat your own daughter for a shameless mistress and a wild child who seduced my boyfriend. Chong Minggang was so angry that his face turned green. He was so angry that he panted a few times before he said anxiously, "Get out of here." Gu Xingyin left without another word. He really thought that she was willing to stay here. Zhong Cheng watched the entire show from beginning to end. Listening to Gu Xingyin's resentful words, he realized for the first time that Yuji had such a huge grudge against Madame An and her daughter. In the past, Yuji would never say this in front of her boyfriend. He always thought that she simply hated them. Now, it seemed that it was more than hate. It was obvious that she hated them to the core. So, because he cheated on and won, Yuji had such a big reaction, right? If he stayed away from Madame An and her daughter from now on, Yuji would see his true feelings. If Gu Xingyin knew what he was thinking, she would probably laugh countless times. Was this man so good at deceiving himself? Chapter 1555. Her words couldn't be any clearer. But Zhong Cheng was still able to find an excuse for himself. Of course, Zhong Cheng wouldn't let her go. Everyone knew that the head of the Zhong family, Zhong Minggang, was already in his 50s. He only had one daughter, Zhong Yuji. It was almost impossible for there to be any accidents. Everything in the Zhong family would be Zhong Yuji. If an ordinary person married her, they would have at least a few decades less to struggle. And Zhong Cheng, on the surface, was the only heir of the Zhong family, but his father had no less than 4 illegitimate children outside. Each and every one of them was very powerful. If he couldn't find a strong wife, his position as the heir of the Zhong family might not be stable. So even if he was a little shameless now, he had to try his best to coax Gu Xingyin back. But he underestimated Gu Xingyin, or rather, he underestimated women. Not all women were able to forgive their boyfriends for the sake of love after they cheated on them. This wasn't love, this was foolishness. Zhong Minggang looked at Zhong Cheng and felt a little uncomfortable. After all, he was disobeyed by his daughter just now. It was really embarrassing to be seen by an outsider. Zhongqing also felt that he had lost face in front of his future father-in-law and was now embarrassed. Then Uncle Zhong, I'll disturb you another day. Zhong Minggang regained the attitude of a kind elder and nodded at him. Yuji has been spoiled by me. It's inevitable that she has a bad temper. Please forgive her. Zhongqing hurriedly said no. The two of them exchanged a few words before Zhongqing left the Zhong family. After Zhongqing left, Zhong Minggang's face darkened. He waited for An Yan, who was standing by the stairs, and snorted coldly. Seducing her own sister's boyfriend. This is the good daughter you raised. Although Zhong Minggang contacted An Yan and her daughter, he knew the severity of the matter. He knew the identity of the An family's mother and daughter. It was fine if he brought them back and treated them better. But even if he and An Yan got together in the future and recognized An Wan as his daughter, An Wan could only be his recognized daughter. She could never be his daughter. Otherwise, he had no way to explain why An Wan was only a month younger than Yuji. An illegitimate daughter was a month younger than the legal wife. Everyone could guess the story behind this. If the Lu family found out that she had an affair with someone else before marriage, thinking about that family's usual style, Zhong Minggang's expression became even uglier. Not to mention, Lu Qinghe, who had passed away, owned nearly 30% of the shares of the Chong family. As for those shares, when she died, she left them all to her only daughter. Now, Zhong Yuji was the biggest shareholder of the Zhong family group. He only had 25%. If he fell out with Yuji, apart from his identity as a father, he didn't have any advantages at all. The more he thought about it, the more upset he felt. He couldn't do anything to Zhong Yuji, so he could only vent his dissatisfaction on An Yan. An Yan was now in her 40s, but she took good care of herself. All these years, Zhong Minggang had never mistreated her in terms of money, so she looked like she was in her 30s. When she heard Zhong Minggang's question, her heart ached. She was not without resentment. She followed Zhong Minggang when she was young. At that time, this man had said that he needed the power of the Lu family, so he had to marry Lu Qinghe, but he still loved her. When everything stabilized, he would divorce Lu Qinghe and marry her. Because of this sentence, she had waited for him for more than 20 years. Chapter 1556. She had been with this man for more than 20 years without any status. She had been looked at strangely by the people around her. Her daughter had cried and asked her why she didn't have a father when she was young. She had endured it. She had endured for more than half of her life, and finally, Lu Qinghe had died. She thought that she had finally seen the light, but she didn't expect that she had entered the Zhong family. But as a mistress who couldn't be seen by others. Her Wenwen had also entered the Zhong family, but she couldn't become Zhong Minggang's daughter. If this was the only result, why did she wait for more than 20 years? To put it bluntly, after more than 20 years, no matter how deep the feelings were, they were almost gone now. What An Yan wanted now was not the illusory and unreliable love. What she wanted was real, something that could bring her status, and benefits. But if she was in such an awkward situation now, if something happened to Zhong Minggang in the future, the Zhong family's property would completely belong to Zhong Yuji alone. It had nothing to do with her, a mistress with no status, and Wenwen, an outsider. How could An Yan accept such a result? At this moment, Zhong Minggang was angry in front of his daughter, but he vented all his anger on her. It wasn't the first time An Yan felt the difference in status. If she was Zhong Minggang's official wife, she would be able to use her words and actions to obtain the respect she deserved. But she wasn't. She was just a mistress with no status. She couldn't anger Zhong Minggang, because she might be kicked out of the house by the angry man. Once he reached such a state, he would truly have nothing left. So she could only endure and face the blame with a smile. An Yan told herself that she had endured for more than 20 years. Now that Lu Qinghe had died because of her, what else couldn't she endure? Zhong Yuji, so what if she was the eldest daughter of the Zhong family? She was just a young and aggressive girl. She was now using her status and Zhong Minggang's indulgence to throw a tantrum. When she became Zhong's wife, and Yan's eyes flashed with coldness. She had 100 ways to make her suffer without knowing what the problem was. Seeing in Yan's submissive manner, Zhong Minggang also realized that his tone wasn't very good. After all, she was a woman who had suffered outside for more than 20 years because of him. Moreover, Zhong Minggang still had some feelings for Yan. He pulled Yan up and said with a sigh, "Don't blame me. I was just angry. Tell me, Wen clearly knows that Zhong Qing is Yuji's boyfriend. Why would she do such a thing?" And Yan knew that Zhong Qing, the eldest son of the Zhong group, was a very rare rich husband. Her Wen couldn't even ask for a good marriage, but it was abandoned by heavy rain like a worn-out shoe. And Yan closed her eyes and leaned on Zhong Minggang. She said tentatively, "I think Mr. Zhong seems to like Wen. Since Yuji doesn't like her, how about?" There was a long silence. And Yan opened her eyes uneasily and met Zhong Minggang's inquisitive gaze. She forced a smile and said, "What's wrong, Minggang?" The smile on Zhong Minggang's face disappeared. He lowered his eyes. "And Yan, I remember telling you that even if I bring you and your daughter back, Wen and Yuji will still be different." Chapter 1557. And Yan's face was a little pale. But Zhong Minggang didn't pity her this time. Instead, he cruelly tore off the veil. "I can give Wen a good life, and even take her as my adopted daughter. But you have to know that she will never be the eldest daughter of the Zhong family." And Yan looked up, and tears fell from her eyes. This time, she wasn't pretending. "Why? Wen is also your daughter, isn't she?" she asked in a hoarse voice. Zhong Minggang looked away. "You should have known this since you started following me around 20 years ago when you didn't have a proper status. Yuji can choose not to marry the eldest son of the Zhong family. She is the eldest daughter of the Zhong family. Without Zhong Qing, she can choose other rich young masters. But Yan," Zhong Minggang said directly to Yan, "Wen can't. Even if Yuji doesn't want to be with Zhong Qing, the Zhong family can't let their son marry an illegitimate daughter." Calling her an illegitimate daughter sounded good. And Wen's situation was even worse than an illegitimate daughter. In the eyes of others, she was just a burden brought by Yan. Neither of them noticed that at the entrance, Wen, who had just returned, was covering her mouth tightly and listening to their conversation with tears in her eyes. She originally thought that after she entered the Zhong family, her mother could become the madam of the Zhong family, and she could also become the eldest daughter of the Zhong family. So she wanted to be on the same level as Zhong Yuji. She even thought that Zhong Yuji was a brainless woman. She just had an extra noble birth. She never thought that she was worse than Zhong Yuji. Until now, her biological father directly told her mother that she could never be the real eldest daughter of the Zhong family in this life. She couldn't be compared to Zhong Yuji in this life. She didn't deserve any man that Zhong Yuji didn't want. And Wen didn't listen anymore. She turned around and ran out. That night, Zhong Minggang's 2 daughters didn't come home. However, their circumstances were completely different. Gu Xingyin said goodbye to her 2 good friends in the design studio, then decisively took her bag and went to her uncle's house. Anyway, the main force of that studio was Zhong Yuji's 2 friends who studied design. She was just the one who invested. On the other hand, Wen spent the entire night alone in the bar. Gu Xingyin's arrival was welcomed by her uncle's family. Zhong Yuji's grandfather, Lu Qingshan, had 3 sons and 1 daughter. Lu Qinghe was his youngest and only daughter. The entire Lu family spoiled Lu Qinghe so much that she had a character of not going back on her word. So, back then, Lu Qinghe didn't agree to her being with Zhong Minggang, but Lu Qinghe still insisted. The Lu family had no choice but to try their best to help their son-in-law with his career so that their daughter could live a better life. After his daughter passed away, his only granddaughter naturally became Lu Qingshan's treasure. "Grandpa's little you, what brings you here today?" Lu Qingshan, who was already in his 70s, asked with a smile while leaning on his walking stick. If it was the old Chong Yuji, in order not to let grandpa and uncle's family worry about her, she would keep it to herself. But she didn't know that her behavior made the Lu family feel that she had a good life at home. Although they were very dissatisfied with Chongming Gang, they couldn't say anything for the sake of their granddaughter. Gu Xingyin wasn't the kind of person who would suffer losses silently. Chapter 1558. If she didn't show it in front of her family members who really cared about her, who would know? Therefore, as soon as her grandfather asked this, Gu Xingyin's eyes immediately turned red. She didn't cry, but this forced appearance of wanting to cry made people feel even more sorry for her. In particular, the Lu family had always known that Zhong Yuji's character was very strong. They had never seen her cry more than a few times since she was a child. "What's wrong with Yuji?" Before Lu Qingshan could speak, his eldest daughter-in-law, Zhong Yuji's eldest aunt, asked very sadly. Speaking of the Lu family, it was strange. Lu Qingshan's 3 sons were all born with boys. In the 3rd generation, there was not a single girl. Other families were worried about not having a male heir, but their family was the only one who wanted to give birth to a female child. But it was a pity that Lu Qingshan had no hope of having a granddaughter. He could only wait and see if he could look forward to having a great-granddaughter. Lu Qinghe was very homesick. When she was alive, she would bring Zhong Yuji back to the Lu family almost every month. Zhong Yuji's uncles and aunts could be said to have watched her grow up, so naturally, they felt very sorry for her. Gu Xingyin listened to her eldest aunt's words, and her heart ached. She slowly told her what had happened during this period of time. In particular, she mentioned that she heard her father say that An was her biological daughter, and that An and her boyfriend, Zhong Sheng, were together. After hearing the last part, the faces of several people in the living room turned cold. "It's simply too much." Lu Qingshan slammed his crutch on the ground twice. His gaze turned to Gu Xingyin's face, and his anger turned into heartache. "You child, such a big thing. Why didn't you tell us?" Zhong Yuji lowered her head and covered her face. "I didn't know. I didn't want to trouble myself, and I didn't know what to do." Eldest aunt looked at her like this, and her heart ached. She walked over and gently hugged Gu Xingyin into her arms. "Don't be sad. Uncle, auntie, and grandfather all love you dearly. There's no need to mention that ungrateful father of yours." Eldest aunt's family was in the military, so her words and actions were much more straightforward than the average person. Lu Qingshan looked at his granddaughter's lowered head and was silent for a moment. He looked at his eldest son who was also angry. "Go, call your brothers back." He lived with his eldest son. His other 2 sons were in the capital, but they didn't live together. Gu Xingyin's uncle, Lu Jingzhang, knew that his father was really angry. Not to mention his father, even he wanted to rush to the Chong family and beat him up when he found out that Chongming Gang was such a trash. He actually had a daughter before marrying her younger sister. He had pretended to be affectionate for more than 20 years, and everyone had been fooled by him. Lu Jingzhang felt a fire burning in his heart as he thought about it. This was too much. Without another word, he called his 2 younger brothers. He didn't say what the matter was. He just said that it was urgent and asked them to come back. Lu Qingshan started from scratch and built the huge Lu group alone. He retired at the age of 60 and handed the family business to his eldest son, Lu Jingzhang, and his second son, Lu Jinghui. His third son, Lu Jingqi, had no interest in business and chose to join the military. Now, he had made a name for himself. The people of the Lu family were not easy to bully. After receiving the call from their eldest brother, although they didn't know what had happened, the two brothers of the Lu family rushed back as soon as possible. Chapter 1559. The three brothers of the Lu family each had their own prospects. They were not at all like those other families, who fought to the death for the sake of property. When Lu Jinghui and Lu Jingqi came, they brought their wives because they didn't know what was going on. The two brothers arrived almost at the same time. "Big brother, what's the matter?" Third brother Lu Jingqi was a straightforward person. He asked as soon as he came in. Lu Jingzhang didn't say anything. It was Gu Xingyin's first aunt who told him what happened just now. Outrageous. Lu Jingqi's face was livid. When little sister chose Chong Minggang, I didn't agree. That guy was scheming, but Qing had just had to jump into his trap. Someone bumped into his elbow. He turned around and found that it was his wife. Gu Xingyin's third aunt looked at her husband with disappointment. Her niece was still here. How could he scold her father in front of others? Lu Jingqi was used to being reckless outside. He was a henpecked husband. He really touched his nose and didn't say anything. Lu Qingshan saw that the whole family was here. He then looked at Gu Xingyin. "Yuji, no matter what happens today, your three uncles and I will definitely stand up for you. The people of our Lu family cannot be casually bullied by others." But he looked at Gu Xingyin. "There's something you need to decide." Gu Xingyin looked up. The corners of her eyes were a little red. "Please say it." Lu Qingshan's voice was very steady. "The key is, what kind of result do you want? Did he just want to chase out the restless mother and daughter? Or do you want to get rid of all the threats in the future?" Gu Xingyin was shocked. She didn't expect that her grandfather would plan so deeply for her. She asked in a hoarse voice, "The latter." "What do you mean?" Lu Qingshan's eyes lit up. He couldn't help but feel satisfied. His grandson's character was very strong. Thinking of his son-in-law who was always respectful to him, a trace of coldness flashed in his eyes. "Get rid of all the threats. That is, naturally, to let your father retire at home in peace." His words were vague, but everyone present understood what he meant. He wanted to remove Chong Minggang's influence in the Chong group and cut off his power. After all, Zhong Yuji held the most shares in Chang's group. She might be weak by herself, but if she had the support of the Lu family, it would not be difficult for her to go against Zhong Minggang. The Lu family had helped the Chong family to rise because of Lu Qinghe. Now, they could take the Chong group back from Chong Minggang for Chong Yuji. Gu Xingyin was silent for a long time before she nodded gently. Lu Qingshan's eyes flashed with praise, but he asked, "Have you thought it through? If you want the second option, then your father-daughter relationship with Chong Minggang will be completely gone." Gu Xingyin's lips curled into a helpless smile. "Given my father's current state, if I were to force An and her mother away, would there still be any affection left between us? No, I don't know how much father-daughter relationship there is between my father and me." Several people in the Lu family thought of the existence of An and her mother, and they couldn't help but be silent. Yes, a man who had a true love soon after he got married, how much sincerity could he have for his wife and child? Chapter 1560. In the end, Lu Qingshan made a decision. "Alright, since it's the latter, we need to make some preparations. Yuji, you can stay at home for the time being. It's fine if you don't go back to the Zhong family." Gu Xingyin nodded. That was exactly what she was thinking. When she went back, she would have to see the mother and daughter's pretentious faces. It was simply unbearable. The Lu family was very good to her. Why should she go back and look for trouble? That night, Gu Xingyin slept very comfortably. When she woke up the next morning, she saw 2 missed calls on her phone. It was from Zhongming Gang. Gu Xingyin glanced at it casually and didn't plan to pick it up. But just as she was about to go out, her phone rang again. She picked it up. "Hello." Zhongming Gang's angry voice came through. "Where did you go? Why didn't you tell me you were coming back?" Gu Xingyin sneered. "Didn't you tell me to get lost? I'm at Grandpa's house now. I don't plan to go back for the time being." After saying that, she hung up and set the phone to silent mode. Zhongming Gang heard the busy tone on the other side and was so angry that he almost threw the phone in his hand. He looked at An on the sofa. This woman was drunk. Not only did she reek of alcohol, but her clothes were also torn. A string of red marks could be seen from her neck to her collarbone. One could imagine how intense the battle last night was. Zhongming Gang was about to go to work early in the morning when he saw An like this outside the door. God knows how much he wanted to throw this woman out in an instant. She went out alone in the middle of the night, drunk, and had a one-night stand with someone else. Was this something that his daughter could do? No girl with self-respect would do such a thing. Zhongming Gang immediately thought of his eldest daughter who also didn't come back for the night. He was more worried about this. An was fine. She was an illegitimate daughter anyway. Not many people knew about it. But Zhong Yuji was different. If Zhong Yuji did such a thing and was photographed, the Zhong family's reputation would be ruined. Therefore, he immediately called Gu Xingyin. When he heard Gu Xingyin say that she was in the Lu family, his first reaction was to heave a sigh of relief. His second reaction was displeasure. Just like all successful men who relied on their wives to get to where they were, Zhongming Gang was a little dissatisfied with his in-laws. It was a taboo for his business rivals to say that he relied on women to get to where he was today. His unhappiness reached its peak after Gu Xingyin hung up on him. He wanted to scold his increasingly rude daughter, but Gu Xingyin didn't give him the chance. Therefore, Zhongming held back his anger and became even more dissatisfied when he saw An lying drunk on the sofa. Just as An came downstairs, Zhongming Gang found a way to vent his anger. "Look at your daughter. What kind of bad habits did she pick up outside? Don't you know how to educate people?" An woke up early in the morning to be scolded like this. By the time she reacted, Zhongming Gang had already driven out. An hurried to her daughter's side. She knew what happened when she saw her daughter's expression. She was anxious and angry, but she couldn't do anything. "Madam An, your breakfast is on the table." A servant reminded her. An felt that those servants must be laughing at her behind her back at this moment. Chapter 1561. She always had a gentle look on her face, but the servants did not treat her very intimately because of that. Now she was angry and anxious, and there was a trace of inferiority in her heart. She blurted out, "Shut up. Can't I see it myself?" The servant glanced at her but didn't say anything. She just left silently. An was scolded early in the morning and saw her daughter like this. How could she be in the mood to eat? She did not let the servants help her. She helped her daughter to the bedroom on the second floor with some difficulty. It wasn't until her figure had left that the servants in the house began to chat. "Sisterly, don't take it to heart. People like her." One of them quietly comforted Sisterly, who had just been scolded. They were all hired by Lu Qinghe when she was still here. They had been here for many years, and they had watched Zhong Yuji grow up. Not long after the mistress of the house left, Mr. Zhong brought this person in. He also brought a girl who was about the same age as Miss An. These aunties, who were familiar with all kinds of melodramatic plots of rich families, immediately imagined a love and hate story. In people's hearts, there was a distinction between close and distant. On this point, the mother and daughter of the An family suffered a loss. Not to mention that the two of them had such a shady identity. Although these servants did not say anything on the surface, they could not get close to the two of them in their hearts. If an Yen could always maintain her gentle image, it would be fine. Now, she could not pretend any more and threw a tantrum. These servants naturally despised her. Sister Li shook her head gently. She is just a woman who has no status with Mr. Zhong. Does she really think she is Mrs. Zhong? Miss is still here. And after so long, Mr. Zhong has never said anything about giving her a status. She really has the face to put on airs. When Sister Li said this, the others also covered their mouths and laughed. That was indeed the case. Miss was here. If the mother and daughter wanted to make trouble, it would depend on Miss's permission. Sister Li thought of An Wen's appearance just now and could not help but look at her with disdain. Did you see Miss N's appearance just now? I saw hickeys on her neck, and she reeked of alcohol. I remember that she did not have a boyfriend. Another person also interrupted. If my daughter dares to do this, I will break her legs. After chatting for a while, they went their separate ways. Gu Xingyin finished breakfast with her grandfather and the others. Since she had nothing to do, she took the Wolf King out for a walk. The Wolf King was not a wolf, but a big, majestic dog. When the Wolf King stood up, it was as tall as Gu Xingyin's chest. Its eyes were fierce and its teeth were sharp. It was said that it had the bloodline of a wolf. If it was brought out, it could easily scare a group of children to tears. However, the Wolf King liked Gu Xingyin very much. When it was held by Gu Xingyin, it was obedient and not irritable at all. Gu Xingyin was led around by the Wolf King. When they passed through a small path, the Wolf King suddenly became agitated. It lowered its body and whimpered in a certain direction. Obviously, it was facing an enemy. At the same time, the sound of dogs barking could be heard from the other side. Gu Xingyin looked over and saw a figure who was also leading a dog. Looking at the dog, Gu Xingyin finally understood why the Wolf King had such a reaction. A Tibetan Mastiff. Chapter 1562. Tibetan Mastiffs and Wolfhounds were the most ferocious of the canine species, and they were naturally aggressive. Gu Xingyin felt the Wolf King's restlessness and patted its head helplessly. Don't make a fuss. If you scare people, I won't bring you out next time. He Lu also heard what was going on here. If you bark again, you won't have meat for dinner. His threat was very simple and crude. But it was this simple and crude that made the big guy under him obediently listen. It put away its teeth and began to dig the ground gloomily. He Lu glanced at him and didn't say anything. He turned to look at the woman who was leading the wolfhound not far away. If his memory wasn't messed up, he should have seen her a few days ago. In another place, this woman seemed to have been cheated on, but the way she shook off the scumbag was very handsome. While He Lu was thinking, Gu Xingyin had already walked towards him. Obviously, her target was him. Hello. Gu Xingyin stood at least 3 meters away from him and greeted him with a light smile. He Lu wasn't good at getting along with women, especially unfamiliar women. He nodded his head in acknowledgement. The Tibetan Mastiff under him started to bark again because of the wolfhound's approach. He Lu pulled it twice, but it didn't listen to him. If the two of them could understand animal language, they would probably have heard the Tibetan Mastiff excitedly declaring war on the Wolf King. But obviously, the Wolf King, who listened to Gu Xingyin, didn't care about it at all. Gu Xingyin looked at the struggling Tibetan Mastiff and suddenly said, "Can I touch it?" He Lu subconsciously said, "She has a bad personality and doesn't let others touch her easily." He was a little annoyed after saying that. If an ordinary person heard such words, they would think that he was rejecting her. Unexpectedly, Gu Xingyin smiled mysteriously. "Don't worry, I have a good relationship with animals." Wasn't it very good? Gu Xingyin didn't know how many times she had received this aura purification skill. Because of the purity of the aura, animals and plants liked it. She didn't have anything to say about such a skill. The system said, "What can I do?" This was all chosen by the host. Most importantly, this was an alien monster that the system had gotten for the host. If it were someone else, they wouldn't have gotten it. Of course, the system kept the rest to itself and did not tell Gu Xingyin. He Lu saw that she was really interested. He didn't know why, but he didn't want to reject her at all. If it were someone else, he would definitely not want to bother with them. But this girl's request, he only hesitated for a moment before saying, "You should greet the lion first. If it likes you, it will react." After saying this, even he Lu himself found it novel. He actually had the patience to instruct a stranger about such things. Gu Xingyin smiled and asked, "It's called a lion?" He Lu nodded. Gu Xingyin squatted down and waved at the lion lying on the ground. "Hello, lion." The lion looked at the human in front of it, opened its mouth and whimpered twice. Its claws also moved forward. Gu Xingyin laughed. "It seems to like me." He Lu felt that it was a little inconceivable. He knew the lion's temper best. It was extremely arrogant. Usually, even bathing and feeding it had to be done by itself. It wouldn't let the servants get close at all. It actually had a good impression of a stranger. Chapter 1563. He Lu became more curious about the girl who was squatting on the ground. When Gu Xingyin saw the lion's furry ears, she couldn't help but like it. She reached out and rubbed it. The lion, who had always been grumpy, was not angry. It still let her play with it. He Lu was very curious about all this. He looked at the Wolf King beside Gu Xingyin, who seemed a little unhappy about being ignored. He couldn't help but say, "I rarely see girls like lions, which are more fierce dogs." In fact, he only knew a few cousins who liked cute pets like golden-haired teddy bears. Gu Xingyin shook her head and said, "I didn't raise the Wolf King. I don't have time to take care of such a big one." She looked up and smiled at him. "Maybe it's fate. Not only dogs, but animals also like me." He Lu looked at her smile and his heart skipped a beat. But he looked at the time and said regretfully, "I have something to do, so I'll go home first." Gu Xingyin nodded and stood up. "Goodbye." She didn't ask for any contact information. He Lu liked such a straightforward attitude the most. This time, he didn't know why, but he felt a little upset. Maybe it was because he hadn't been treated so coldly by a woman for a long time. He Lu shook his head with a smile. There was a serious goodbye in his ear. "Goodbye, lion." The Tibetan Mastiff beside him heard the voice and turned around to smile at him. It seemed that it would abandon its master at any moment. He Lu turned around and saw the girl in white casual clothes opposite him waving at the Tibetan Mastiff with a smile, as if the lion could understand her. However, judging from the lion's reaction, it really seemed that it could understand her. He Lu turned around and left with the lion, who was still reluctant to part with him. Gu Xingyin continued to walk around with the Wolf King before returning home. Lu Qingshan was now idle at home. Every day, he played chess and planted flowers. Occasionally, he went out for a walk with his old friends. His life was very leisurely. Seeing Gu Xingyin coming back with the Wolf King, he couldn't bear to look at her. "Yuji, you're such a delicate little girl. It's so nice to buy a kitten or a rabbit to raise, but you're holding the Wolf King." Ever since Lu Qingshan was young, he had always wanted a well-behaved, quiet, and delicate daughter. However, when Lu Qinghe was born, he was busy with his career. By the time her career had stabilized, her daughter had already been spoiled by her family. Not to mention being delicate and lovable, Lu Qinghe could even use a fulcrum to move the earth. Later, when his daughter failed, he placed his hopes on his granddaughter. In the end, Looking at the wolfhound that was even taller than his granddaughter when it stood up, Lu Qingshan thought that he could only place his hopes on his great-granddaughter. Gu Xingyin smiled. I'm not raising it. I'm just going out for a walk with the Wolf King. Right. She asked casually, I just met a man with a Tibetan Mastiff on the road. He looks quite handsome. Grandpa, do you know who he is? As soon as he heard the words Tibetan Mastiff, Lu Qingshan's first reaction was that his granddaughter was not injured, right? After Gu Xingyin confirmed that she was fine, he breathed a sigh of relief and said, there's only one person who can raise a Tibetan Mastiff here. He Lu, the third master of the He family. Gu Xingyin's eyes narrowed. Could it be that He family? If it was true, then it would be terrible. Lu Qingshan was very satisfied with his granddaughter's reaction. It's that He family. Chapter 1564. There were many families with the surname He in Hua Nation. However, if one were to talk about the most famous He family, many people would know that the He family referred to the He family in the capital. The ancestors of the He family in the capital had followed Taizu to conquer the world and had made great achievements. Their descendants had also lived up to their name. The He family's main base was in the military. Coincidentally, there would be a genius in the military in every generation of the He family. No clan could guarantee that every generation of descendants would be outstanding, but for a clan like the He clan, as long as there were one or two outstanding descendants in every generation, with their foundation and connections, this clan would not fall. Moreover, there were more than one or two outstanding members in this generation of the He family. Apart from those with average talents, there were 3 masters in this generation of the He family. Although they were called masters, the oldest of the 3 was only in his 40s. The youngest, 3rd master, was not even old enough to stand up. First master, He Ji, was a figure that could be seen almost every day on Hua Nation TV. He was the youngest minister in the country and had a bright future in the political arena. He even had a chance to compete for the highest position. Second master, He Qi, was a famous figure in Hua Nation and even the world. He owned a Wuxia corporation and had branches all over Asia, Africa, and Europe. He was on the top of the Forbes rich list every year. Third master, He Lu. He was the youngest person in the military to hold the rank of Major General in Hua Nation. He had been promoted to Major General at the age of 27. He had not relied on his family's influence, but on his own abilities. He had earned it step by step. Anyone with a discerning eye knew that He Lu's future would not stop there based on his age and family background. Therefore, some people said that even if the most prominent family in Hua Nation was not the He family at the moment, it would definitely be the He family in the future. The first and second master of the He family were already married. Third master, He Lu, was the only one left. Countless families in the capital wanted to be on good terms with him. However, after so many years, no one had heard of He Lu being close to any family's daughter. Lu Qingshan was shocked when he heard He Lu's name. He had heard rumors that He Lu did not get close to women. Moreover, not only did he not get close to women, but he was also very cold in his dealings with others. The Lu family had lived here for so many years, and it was rare to see He Lu's smiling face. Is Yuji alright? Lu Qingshan couldn't help but ask again. Gu Xingyin couldn't help but laugh. How scary was He Lu in Grandpa's heart? She shook her head. I'm fine. I didn't say anything to Third Master He. I just greeted the Tibetan Mastiff called Lion. Lu Qingshan knew that his granddaughter was close to animals. He looked at his granddaughter, who was smiling without a trace of nervousness. Although he knew in his heart that the other party wasn't a girl who coveted power, he still couldn't help but advise her, that Third Master He, it's best if we don't get too close. Gu Xingyin seemed a little confused as to why he would say such a thing. Lu Qingshan said, a family like ours, in the eyes of ordinary people, is considered a high and mighty rich family. But in front of a real rich family like the He family, it's still not enough. Grandpa is afraid that you will be taken advantage of. Gu Xingyin glanced at Lu Qingshan and suddenly smiled. Grandpa, don't worry. I won't covet anything that doesn't belong to me. Chapter 1565. Hearing this, Lu Qingshan also relaxed. But she didn't know that Gu Xingyin still had half a sentence hidden in her heart. She naturally wouldn't think about someone who didn't belong to her. But what if that man was born to belong to her? Gu Xingyin shook her head. There were some things that others couldn't know. He Lu also returned home. This wasn't where he lived. This was a rare vacation, so his second brother, who had already married, invited his younger brother to stay for a while. As a successful businessman, He Qi was best at reading people's expressions. He glanced at He Lu and knew that his younger brother was in a good mood. Did something good happen when you went out? He Qi asked with a smile. He Lu's second sister-in-law came out with a bowl of fruit. Hearing this, she glanced at her younger brother-in-law's expressionless face. Sometimes, she really admired her husband. Her younger brother-in-law's calm face could tell whether he was happy or unhappy. But she didn't doubt He Qi's eyes. Sure enough, the next moment, He Lu nodded and said, I just met an interesting person. Hearing this, He Qi became spirited. Interesting person? There weren't many people who could interest his younger brother. Man or woman? He Qi asked. Gu Xingyin's bright face flashed in front of He Lu's eyes. He said, woman. He Qi's eyes lit up. Speaking of which, the He family married late. His family wasn't particularly worried about He Lu not having a family even though he was almost 30 years old. Especially with He Lu's conditions. As long as he opened his mouth, who knew how many young ladies in the capital would fight to enter the He family. But the key point was, after so many years, he had never seen He Lu treat anyone with a pleasant expression. Not to mention being interested, other than his family and friends from childhood, there wasn't even a girl who was slightly close to He Lu. He Qi even secretly thought that He Lu didn't like boys, right? But later, he didn't worry about this. Because not only were there no girls by He Lu's side, there were also no men. He Qi didn't have time to think about these things in the past, but in recent years, his career had been successful, his family was harmonious, and his wife had given him an adorable and invincible daughter. Second Master He, who felt that his life was complete, began to worry about his younger brother's lifelong affairs. After all, the old man at home was open-minded and felt that his children and grandchildren had their own blessings. As for her eldest brother, he was so engrossed in his career that he couldn't even take care of his own family matters. From this, He Qi developed a sense of responsibility as an elder brother who was like a father. He Lu was in the army and didn't have much time off. However, there were so many men in the He family and he had been close to He Qi since he was young. Every time she came back from her vacation, she would spend most of her time at her second brother's place, other than going to the old house to visit the old master. He Qi seized this opportunity and often took He Lu out in the name of meeting a few friends when he returned home. He Lu didn't want to embarrass his second brother, so he agreed every time. But every time, He Lu would be able to see a few young ladies of similar age and family background among those so-called friends. He Lu wasn't an idiot. How could he not understand when he saw this situation? So once, when the two brothers returned home from a party, he directly told He Qi that he had no interest in this kind of blind date. If He Qi was like this again, he wouldn't come again. He Qi naturally wouldn't distance himself from his younger brother because of this. He agreed on the surface, but his heart became more anxious. Chapter 1566. After confirming that his younger brother wasn't interested in men and women, He Qi had a new worry. Could it be that this younger brother had something, that he couldn't say? Thinking of this possibility, He felt that his whole body was unwell. But he couldn't say this to He directly. He could discuss it with his wife, but He also felt that he was crazy to think of this. His wife would probably scold him. This time, he finally heard about girls from He's mouth. How could he not be excited? So he quickly asked, "Whose daughter is it? Do you know her? How old is she?" He glanced at He and said helplessly, "I just met her on the road and said a few words. How would I know whose family she is from?" In fact, Gu Xingyin's identity wasn't difficult to find out. This area was a famous rich area in the capital. Money wasn't enough. You had to have some connections to buy this area. With He's connections, he probably knew which building belonged to which family. What's more, it wasn't rare to see such a large wolfhound. But He didn't want to talk about this. He said that they met by chance, but He didn't think so. With He's perfect 1.8m figure and handsome face that could be compared to a big-screen superstar, even if they didn't know his identity, there were still many girls who came to talk to him. There were even some with hot personalities who directly hinted at him. But He had never heard anything about strange women from He's mouth. This time, he didn't just talk. He was obviously in a good mood. He even said that she was interesting. He, who was a playboy before marriage, said that a man's love for a woman often started from interest. Not to mention who was never interested in people. His eyes were burning. He wanted to know more about it, but He wasn't willing to cooperate. He also knew what He was thinking. In his heart, there was only helplessness. "I say, brother, I really don't have any interest in dating or marriage. Don't be so surprised." At this time, He didn't think that he would be slapped in the face so quickly. He saw that He didn't speak and understood his brother's character. If he didn't want to say it, no one could pry it out of his mouth. But even if He didn't say anything, it didn't mean that He didn't know. This time, it was rare for He to have a long vacation. The next day, he was called out to a gathering by his best friends who had grown up with him. He also found someone to find out who the girl he met at He was. "So it's the granddaughter of the Lu clan and the daughter of the Zhong clan." Both families were well known in the capital. He knew Gu Xingyin's identity at a glance. This information was very detailed. It even found out that the Zhong family and the Zhong family had always intended to form a marriage alliance. Naturally, it also dug out the Zhong family's dirty secrets. However, He's focus was not on this. He looked at the information that showed that Zhong Yuji's boyfriend was Zhong Cheng. Just a few days ago, the two of them broke up. Just a few days ago, He told He that he would terminate his cooperation with the Zhong family. The cooperation between He and the Zhong family was just a small project. There were many competing companies, and all of them were about the same. He had chosen the Zhong family at random. Of course, he didn't mind this kind of thing. What he was more curious about was why who had never cared about these things, would suddenly say this. Chapter 1567. He had asked this question before, but how did He answer? It seemed like he just mentioned it casually, and He didn't care. But now, it was different. Looking at the information about Zhong Cheng's cheating sister, He immediately thought of his younger brother's anger for a woman. He looked and couldn't help but laugh. "You still said that you met by chance. Brat, I can't beat you in a fight, but in terms of love, 10 of you, can't compare to me." He looked carefully at Gu Xingyin's information again. Her family background is good, and her character is not stained. She is a good match for third brother. Gu Xingyin still didn't know that she had been labeled as a future sister-in-law in the He family's second master's heart. Her life in the Lu family was very comfortable. Even the air was much fresher without the extreme father and White Lotus. But she wasn't in a hurry, but Zhong Minggang was. It was a lie to say that he didn't have feelings for Zhong Yuji. After all, she was the daughter he doted on for more than 20 years. After a long time, he could even have feelings for an animal, let alone a human. Even though Gu Xingyin said that Zhong Minggang was a scumbag of a father, it couldn't be denied that Zhong Yuji received a lot of love from her father in the first 20 years of her life. But this kind of love was limited. When Zhong Minggang doted on Zhong Yuji, he took out the same amount of fatherly love, even more, to dote on an illegitimate daughter that was born outside. Zhong Minggang felt that his eldest daughter, Zhong Yuji, was born to be the high and mighty eldest daughter of the Zhong family. She had him, her mother, and her grandfather's family to dote on her. She didn't lack anything. But his youngest daughter, An, was different. She needed more love from her father. It was fine if she didn't know about this kind of thing, but Gu Xingyin knew it clearly. Especially, Gu Xingyin, who had read the plot, knew that every time Zhong Minggang went on a business trip, he brought her those small gifts. They weren't unique. He didn't forget to give his sister the same gift every time. It wasn't just that. Zhong Minggang was an extremely selfish person. It could be seen from the fact that he chose Lu Qinghe for power and wealth even though he clearly had true love, but he couldn't let go of true love and let An Yen follow him for the rest of his life without any title or share. The person he loved the most was still himself. Just like now, he called Gu Xingyin several times in a row, not because he missed his daughter very much, but because he was worried that his daughter would be closer to the Lu family. Towards this powerful Yu clan, Zhong Minggang's heart had always been fearful and dissatisfied. The Lu family's way of doing things was too tough. He felt that he had been living under the shadow of the Lu family for many years. However, his daughter was very close to the Lu family. This was what Zhong Minggang was most worried about. His daughter Zhong Yuji held 30% of the shares of the Zhong family. Such a huge share, if Zhong Yuji turned against him, he would not be able to take advantage of it. If it was just his daughter alone, he wouldn't be worried at all. How could a young person who had just left school and didn't know anything about the business world have any ability? He was worried that the Lu family would interfere. Zhong Minggang always felt that the Lu family had always been coveting the Zhong group. If they used some underhanded means to take the shares from his daughter, and then used the Lu family's power to make things difficult for the Zhong family, thinking about this possibility, Zhong Minggang felt a chill run down his spine. So he couldn't wait for Gu Xingyin to hurry home. Chapter 1568. Gu Xingyin really wanted to hang up the phone. She didn't want to listen to this man's fake sincerity at all. If it was the real Zhong Yuji, she might be soft-hearted because of this. But Gu Xingyin was different. She had seen too much of the fickleness of human nature. It was easy to tell if a person was sincere or not. Zhong Minggang was so nice to her. He obviously had other intentions. Her eldest aunt stopped her. She asked Gu Xingyin to say a few perfunctory words to appease Gu Xingyin. Then, her eldest aunt pulled her to sit down. Yuji, Zhong Minggang wants to take you back. Gu Xingyin nodded. Her eldest aunt smiled. Her eyes were gentle. Then you can go back. Gu Xingyin looked reluctant. I don't like to go home. Now when I see some people, I can't help but want to tear them apart. Her eldest aunt patted her hand and said seriously, if you don't like them, just drive them away. She looked at Gu Xingyin. Yuji, you have to remember that you are the daughter of the Zhong family. You are the miss of the Zhong family. That is your home. You are the miss of the Zhong family. You are living outside and letting an illegitimate daughter and a mistress take over your home. What is this? For some things, as time passes, even the false will become the real thing. The Yin family has been living in the Zhong family for a long time. Those who don't know the truth will think that they are the real madam and miss of the Zhong family. Gu Xingyin's heart skipped a beat. She looked at her eldest aunt. But aren't we going to? What she wanted to say was, didn't they already say that they were going to take over the Zhong group? Her eldest aunt glared at her. So what if you take over the Zhong group? Can you not recognize Zhong Minggang as your father? Can you not let him live in the Zhong family's house? And when that time comes, you will fall out with him. He will only protect the mother and daughter even more and let them continue to live in the house that you and your mother used to live in. Are you willing? Gu Xingyin was suddenly enlightened. She nodded at first aunt. Then I'll talk to my dad later and ask him to drive the Yin family's mother and daughter out. Gu Xingyin said. Eldest aunt shook her head. It's not appropriate for you to say that. Let us do it. Gu Xingyin was surprised. First aunt, actually, how could she not know that these words were more appropriate to be said by her maternal grandparents? It was just that this kind of thing was definitely a thankless task to offend someone. The Lu family treated her very well, so how could she have the nerve to ask? She shook her head. This matter is too troublesome. It's better if I do it myself, eldest aunt interrupted her. You're being so estranged. Are you not going to treat us as family? In my opinion, there's no need to offend anyone. Ever since that bastard Zhongming Gang did such a wicked thing, our Lu family no longer has any friendship with him, only hatred. Since we're already enemies, there's no need to talk about offending them. As for the Yin family's mother and daughter, eldest aunt's face was full of disdain. Our Lu family, do you think we're afraid of these two trash who live by seducing men? Eldest aunt was also a swift and decisive person. If she said she would do it, she would do it. She immediately called Zhongming Gang. The meaning behind her words was very obvious. You want Yuji to go back. Fine. Chase that restless mother and daughter out. Zhongming Gang was immediately furious. The Lu family was really too arrogant. Lu Qinghe was already dead, but they still wanted to interfere in his private affairs. He asked Gu Xingyin to answer the phone, but his daughter's phone was always busy, and the Lu family did not relent. This kind of situation made Zhongming Gang even more certain of his guess. The Lu family must have a conspiracy to detain Yuji. Chapter 1569. He didn't even think that the Lu family kept their daughter because they liked Gu Xingyin. He even thought that the Lu family was using this opportunity to put their daughter under house arrest. As for what they wanted to do after putting their daughter under house arrest, the more he thought about it, the more Zhongming Gang felt that his guess was right. The Lu family was definitely ambitious. But to chase An and her daughter out, Zhongming Gang couldn't bear to do that. Not bearing to do that was only one aspect. More importantly, it was about a man's pride. What right did the Lu family have to order him around? Gu Xingyin listened from the side. It seemed that Zhongming Gang wasn't willing to compromise. Eldest aunt's expression was getting worse. Gu Xingyin's eldest aunt really didn't understand Zhongming Gang. She was just a mistress. Was she more important than her own daughter? Even though she knew that Zhongming Gang was a scumbag, eldest aunt still felt her heart ache when she really met him. At this moment, she saw Gu Xingyin secretly mouthing, "Let him do a paternity test within one." Eldest aunt narrowed her eyes. Although she didn't know what Gu Xingyin meant, she immediately changed her words. It's fine if you don't chase them out for now. Take that cheap daughter of yours to do a paternity test. Bring the results to the Lu family. After saying this, eldest aunt didn't seem to want to hear Zhongming Gang's voice anymore. She hung up the phone with a bang. She asked Gu Xingyin, "Why did you suddenly think of this?" After all, she was someone who had experienced many things. After she asked, eldest aunt reacted. "That An is your father's daughter." She thought about that daughter's age and compared it to Zhongming Gang. Her face darkened even more. If it was true, then Chongming was really a scumbag. Gu Xingyi knew that and one wasn't, but she couldn't say this to eldest aunt. So she just shook her head and said that she didn't know either. But looking at her father's attitude towards An, she felt that he treated her better than he did her. It was as if he was compensating her. That was all he needed to say. Sure enough, eldest aunt was so angry that she wanted to discuss it with her father-in-law and husband, but Gu Xingyin stopped her. There's still no news about it. Why don't we wait for my dad to come back with the results? Eldest aunt thought about it and agreed. She patted Gu Xingyin's hand and said, Yuji is so thoughtful. Eldest aunt is so angry. At the other side. Just as Chongming thought about the Lu family's words, he fell into deep thought. Could it be that the Lu family was suspicious of Anwen's identity when they said they wanted to do a paternity test? No, no way. She couldn't let them know that Anwen was her child. If that was the case, she would be the one in the wrong if she had already had an affair when she first got married. But if he didn't take it out, he would seem guilty. Halcyon thought for a moment, then called an old friend of his. A paternity test wasn't completely real, was it? Chongming didn't tell Yen and his daughter about this, afraid that they would think too much. The next day, when he went to work, he took a few strands of Anwen's hair and went to his old friend's place. Help me do a paternity test. I might have to trouble you to help me change it. Okay. After Chongming sent the thing over, his heart calmed down. As long as he took this to the Lu family, no matter how suspicious the Lu family was, they wouldn't say anything, right? Chapter 1570. Gu Xingyin naturally paid attention to Chongming's actions. Of course, Anwen's actions were also under her control. She saw Chongming calling an old acquaintance and making an appointment with him to help her fake it. When she saw this, she almost laughed out loud. She didn't know how interesting her scumbag father's expression would be at that time. As for Anwen, her life was very carefree. Her life wasn't bad before. After all, Chongming would give Yen a sum of money regularly. It was more than enough to support the mother and daughter. But there was still a big difference between living a good life and being rich. At least in Anwen's opinion, compared to now, the life she lived before wasn't called living, but survival. Now, she could go to all the big brands and swipe her card. She didn't even need to look at the price. If it was before, she had to save money to buy a 4-figure dress. And Yen wasn't as happy as her daughter. She even often advised her daughter, you should restrain yourself. Now, nothing is settled. The Chong family only has Chong Yuji. We have to leave a good impression in front of your father. Anwen didn't care about this at all. In her heart, now that Chong Yuji was forced out of the Chong family by them, they were the mistresses of the Chong family. What else did they have to worry about? But she didn't know if Yan's worry was really unnecessary. Chongming was originally a little dissatisfied with this daughter, because of the one-night stand in the bar. And during this period, Anwen's crazy shopping behavior made him a little dissatisfied. It wasn't that he was in the mood for the money that was spent. He could still afford such expenses. He just felt that Anwen's behavior was like a nouveau riche. She didn't have the temperament of a rich girl at all. After all, she was raised by Yen, a woman who didn't know much. Whether it was vision or temperament, she wasn't very good. There was a gap only when there was a comparison. Thinking about it this way, although Yuji was spoiled and had a bad temper, at least she wouldn't be embarrassed when brought out. Chongming had a rare trace of satisfaction with Chong Yuji. Because he got in through the back door, the test results came out quickly. He was in a meeting when he received the call from his old friend. Because he didn't take it seriously, he casually said that he would come back at night and treat him to dinner. After work, Chongming drove to his old friend's private hospital. In the end, when the other party handed over the report, he casually glanced at it and smiled. You know me well, kid. I didn't even tell you how to change it, and you changed it for me. The results of this report clearly showed that there was no parent-child relationship between the two. Chongming Gang was still thinking that his old friend was really good at saving him a lot of time. He had to give him a big red packet later. Hearing this, his old friend was stunned. I haven't changed it for you yet. You didn't tell me how to deal with it, so I don't dare to change the test results without your permission. After he said this, he didn't hear any response from his old friend. Thinking carefully, he suddenly realized the meaning behind his words. If he remembered correctly, one of the parties involved in the paternity test was his old friend himself, the doctor, who had seen a lot of feuds between rich and powerful families, immediately thought of a possibility. He raised his head to look at Chongming Gang. As expected, at this moment, Chongming Gang's face was as black as the bottom of a pot. Chapter 1571. Chongming Gang's hand gripped the report tightly, almost twisting the thin piece of paper out of shape. His voice sounded like it was coming out of his mouth, word by word. You're saying that you haven't made any changes to this report? The doctor looked at him and knew what was going on. He felt a bit of sympathy for his old friend, but he still said what needed to be said. Yes, this is the correct result. All that was left in Chongming Gang's mind was anger. He raised his head and looked at his old friend. I'm sorry, old Yang. I probably won't be able to eat with you tonight. Another day, I'll definitely come and apologize. The doctor, old Yang, knew that his old friend must be feeling terrible. He nodded and said, we're close friends. Go and do your own things. Chongming Gang wasn't in the mood to talk to him. He stepped on the accelerator and rushed home. Dinner was already prepared at home. And Yan and Anwen were waiting for Chongming Gang to come back to eat. Chongming Gang returned home angrily. He didn't forget to ask all the servants to leave. The servants at home were all old. They knew that something big had happened. They just needed to work hard and get paid. Of course, they had to stay as far away from this kind of thing as possible. After everyone left, Chongming Gang walked into the dining room. And Yan also felt that the atmosphere was a bit off. And Wen, on the other hand, unconsciously acted coquettishly towards Chongming Gang. Dad, you're finally back. I'm starving. I've been waiting for you to come back to eat. When he brought the An family's mother and daughter in, Chongming Gang said that he would treat Anwen as his own daughter in the future. He wanted Anwen to call him Dad. This was originally a polite sentence, but Anwen took it seriously. From that day on, she kept calling him Dad. She even called him Yuji, her biological daughter. This was actually a bit inappropriate, but Chongming Gang thought that since she was his daughter, it didn't matter if she called him that. However, Anwen's call of Dad sounded like mockery to Chongming Gang's ears. He, Chongming Gang, had been smart all his life. He was actually played like this. Shut up. Who's your dad? I'm not your dad. Chongming Gang, who hadn't cursed in many years, couldn't help but curse. Anwen was dumbfounded by this scolding. Chongming Gang had always felt that he owed her. After such a long time, he hadn't even said a single harsh word to her. Even if he was dissatisfied with what had happened at the bar last time, he had only kept it in his heart. When had he ever spoken so harshly to her? The more Anwen thought about it, the more aggrieved she felt. Her eyes turned red and tears fell. And Yen felt her heart ache as she watched from the side. She had been protecting her daughter all these years. Her only daughter was her lifeblood. She treasured her a lot. How could she not feel heartache when she saw her like this? Immediately, her eyes turned red as well. And Yen wiped her tears and looked at Chongming Gang with a pale face. I know you might not be happy outside, but you can't take it out on a child. I know that I'm useless. I'm just an unpresentable mistress. I'm not your legitimate wife, and I can't help you much in your career. So, if you're unhappy, take it out on me. Don't take it out on Wenwen, Ming Gang. And Yan had always been the most familiar with this tactic of retreating to advance and softening her attacks. She also knew that Chong Ming Gang liked this tactic the most. Chapter 1572. If it was any other time, Chong Ming Gang would not be able to hold on for more than a few minutes, then he would walk up and comfort her. But this time, he did not. And Yen cried for a while. Seeing that Chong Ming Gang did not react at all, she looked up at him in confusion. Chong Ming Gang was looking at her with a face full of mockery and even hatred. Seeing this woman act so well, Chong Ming Gang felt that he was the stupidest idiot in the world in the past. If he wasn't stupid, how could he be a cuckold and be a father for more than 20 years? He looked at An Yen in front of him. This woman, for so many years, had relied on this look to force herself to put on an act in front of him, to gain his pity. And he himself actually believed it. Probably because his expression was too scary, An Yen felt a trace of uneasiness. She even forgot to cry and whispered, Chong Ming Gang, what's wrong with you today? What's wrong? Chong Ming Gang laughed coldly, and threw the thing in his hand towards An Yen on the same day. An Yen panicked. She slowly stood up and picked up the thing on the ground. At first glance, she saw the words, paternity test, and her heart felt empty. She continued to read. When she saw the words, not related by blood, at the end, she felt all the energy in her body being sucked out. No wonder. No wonder Chong Ming Gang had such a reaction. She forced herself to hold on to the dining table to prevent herself from falling. She looked at Chong Ming Gang and wondered how she could find an excuse to cover up this matter. She slowly pursed her lips. Chong Ming Gang, this can't be true. Wenwen is definitely your child. It's true. There must be a problem with the results. Meeting Chong Ming Gang's mocking eyes, she took back the words that she did not believe. Chong Ming Gang sneered. Go on, go on. I just want to know, in front of this truth, what can you do? Make excuses for yourself. An Wen was already stunned by this unexpected development. What did father mean just now? She was not the daughter of the Chong family. How was that possible? Didn't mother tell her that she was the daughter of the Chong family? How could she not be the daughter of the Chong family? An Wen looked at her mother with hopeful eyes. No matter when, his mother would always be able to solve everything perfectly. This time, it would definitely be the same, right? Meeting her daughter's gaze, An Yen closed her eyes. Ming Gang, you'd rather believe this cold test result than believe in our years of relationship, right? Feelings. Zhong Ming Gang sneered. Until Lu Qing had died, she still thought that he was deeply in love with her. How could he possibly believe in love? He looked at An Yen. I really didn't expect you to be such a powerful woman, An Yen. I, Zhong Ming Gang, have never suffered such a huge setback in anyone's hands in my entire life. Hello, you're simply wonderful. Zhong Ming Gang was furious. He pointed in the direction of the door. Now, immediately, get out of the Zhong family. Remember, don't try to take away anything that belongs to the Zhong family. Chong Ming Gang felt as if there was a layer of blood in front of his eyes. He was so angry that he wanted to vomit blood. This slut. Bitch. Chapter 1573. An Wen felt that all of this was wrong. How could she not be the daughter of the Chong family? She was clearly Chong Minggang's daughter. She kept looking at An Yen, hoping that in the next moment, An Yen would be able to produce strong evidence to prove that the report was wrong. However, An Yen remained silent. Even she felt guilty. She could not find a strong enough reason to refute this paternity test. Chong Minggang saw that the two of them were not moving and said eerily, "Do you want me to get someone to chase you out?" "And Yan, since we've known each other for more than 20 years, this is the last bit of face I'm giving you. In 10 minutes, if I see you still here, I'll get someone to throw your things and your people out." And Yan looked at Chong Minggang. Her voice was filled with a sadness that shocked even herself. "Are you really that heartless?" Chong Minggang's expression was cold. At this time, this woman still had the face. She still had the face to say that he was heartless. He did not want to communicate with this woman any longer. "I said, get lost." At this moment, An suddenly pounced forward and hugged Chong Minggang's arm. "Father, father, I don't believe it. This can't be true. I'm your daughter. How can I not be your daughter? Father, you can't just ignore the father-daughter relationship we've had for so many years just because of some untrue things." At this moment, Wen's mind was blank. She only knew that she could not be chased out by Chong Minggang. If she was chased out, she would have to return to her previous life without any jewelry or branded goods. She had had enough of that life. She wanted to be a rich young lady. She wanted to be a superior person. Father loved her so much. He definitely wouldn't chase her out, right? However, she thought too much. Chong Minggang's kindness to her was all based on the fact that An was his biological daughter. Now, he knew that it was all a joke. And he was the one who was being played like a monkey in the joke. How could he still have fatherly love for An? He even felt disgusted when he thought about how An was someone else's child, but he had raised her like a treasure for more than 20 years. An was pushed away by a strong force. She lost her balance and her head hit the edge of the table. So painful. For a moment, she couldn't even see clearly. Yan was shocked and hurriedly ran over to support her daughter. Looking at Chong Minggang's cold and mocking eyes, Yan finally realized that this man really hated the mother and daughter pair to the core. Chong Minggang coldly said, 7 minutes left. Yan's heart trembled. She knew that Chong Minggang was a man of his word. If he was really chased out later, that would be really embarrassing. She said to An, "Mom will go pack up and come find you soon." "Pack up?" Chong Minggang sneered, "Remember my words. Don't try to take away anything that belongs to the Chong Ming family. None of you are worthy." Yan stopped in her tracks. Why didn't they take away what belonged to the Zhong family? All these years, she had never gone out to look for a job. She had always relied on Zhong Minggang's money to support her. How could she have anything that truly belonged to her? Was this man trying to force them to their deaths? Chapter 1574. She couldn't help but turn around and beg, "Minggang." Zhong Minggang raised his hand and looked at his watch. "There are still 5 minutes. Don't call me Minggang, I feel like you're dirtying my name." After being humiliated again and again, even Yan couldn't take it anymore. She screamed, okay, Zhong Minggang, since you're so heartless, I won't say anything more." She bent down and helped An up, and the two of them walked out of the door with difficulty. Zhong Minggang looked coldly at the backs of the mother and daughter, and pressed the service bell in the house. The nannies and servants who had been hiding earlier all appeared in the dining room. Zhong Minggang ordered coldly, "Clean this place up, and burn everything in the room where the mother and daughter are staying." The mother and daughter. The servants looked at each other and understood that he was referring to the An family. Master was finally tired of them. Although they didn't understand what had happened here, everyone was happy to see such an outcome. Nanny Li was the most experienced here, and she stood up and asked, "Those expensive jewels?" Zhong Minggang's eyes flashed with disgust, "Burn them all." Yes. Everyone understood his attitude now. It seemed that Sir really hated that pair of mother and daughter to the core. TSK, they didn't know what they had done to anger the heavens and the people. Nanny Li asked again, "Then, Master, when will eldest miss come back? Hearing his eldest daughter's name, Zhong Minggang's eyes finally warmed up. Tomorrow, I will personally go to the Lu family to pick Yuji up. A smile appeared on Nanny Li's face when she heard this. Alright, then I'll go and clean Mrs. room again. Once everyone had left, Halcyon finally let out a sigh of relief. He sat on a chair in the dining room and rubbed his forehead tiredly. Recently, because of the period in the company, he had been running around, and after this incident, he deeply felt that his body couldn't take it anymore. After this period of time, when he had time, he had to go to the hospital to have a checkup. Lu family. Gu Xingyin was sitting on the sofa and eating fruits. She was smiling as she listened to the system's live broadcast of what happened in the Zhong family. She knew that this pair of mother and daughter from the An family didn't need anyone to deal with them at all. They could dig their own graves. Eldest aunt walked over and saw the smile on her face. What are you looking at? You look so happy. Gu Xingyin replied casually, I'm watching a show. When first aunt heard this, she glanced at the TV that was playing a show about the battle between rich mother-in-law and daughter-in-law. She was deeply worried about her niece's taste. Why would such a young girl like to watch such things? Gu Xingyin still didn't know that her taste was being despised. She thought for a moment and said, my father will probably come tomorrow. Hearing her mention Chong Ming-gang, eldest aunt immediately threw the matter of watching the show to the back of her mind, and the smile on her face disappeared. Sure. However, it won't be easy to bring you back from the Lu family. The next day, Chong Ming-gang didn't even go to the company. Early in the morning, he brought a car full of gifts to the Lu family. His attitude was unexpectedly sincere. Lu Qingshan looked at him and snorted, ever since Qing he left, I haven't seen President Chong come to our house. This time, you finally remembered our house. Chapter 1575. Chong Ming-gang was feeling guilty, so he didn't react when he heard this. Instead, he smiled. This reaction surprised the Lu family members. Chong Ming-gang asked the servants to carry all the gifts in. He smiled apologetically, father-in-law, I know that I did something shameful some time ago. Now I know that I was wrong. He said sincerely, I won't beat around the bush. I came here today to take Yuji back. After all, Yuji is the daughter of the Zhong family. Although I know that you kept her here because you like her, others might not think so, right? Those who don't know would think that Yuji is not favored in the Zhong family. His words were beautiful and pleasant, and Lu Qingshan's expression became slightly better. However, he still snorted coldly, take Yuji home. Don't you have a gentle mistress and a gentle and well-behaved daughter in your family? Those who don't know would think that she is your biological daughter. The words biological daughter were like a thorn that stabbed into Chong Ming-gang's heart. His disgust for Madame An and her daughter increased by several degrees. He still looked guilty, I was muddle-headed. I'm already so old, and I still did something so embarrassing. Yesterday, I already chased that mother and daughter out. I swear that such a thing will never happen again. Chased out? The Lu family didn't expect this. In addition, Chong Ming-gang took out the paternity test. This is the paternity test I did a few days ago. I didn't do anything to hurt Qing He before marriage. Seeing this, Lu Qingshan's expression relaxed slightly. He nodded at Chong Ming-gang, and his tone softened a lot, you are thoughtful. Gu Xingyin sneered at the side. She thought that Chong Ming-gang was a flexible person. Last night, he was so angry because of this thing. This was the proof of his humiliation. However, today, he could use it as a reason to show his loyalty to the Yu family. It was no wonder that such a tolerant person could be successful in the business world. At this time, Lu Qingshan looked at Gu Xingyin, Yuji is also an adult. She has her own ideas. Why don't you ask her if she's willing to go back to the Zhong family with you? Hearing this, Chongming looked at Gu Xingyin. As long as the Yu clan did not obstruct them, he still had a high chance of persuading his daughter. Just as he thought, Gu Xingyin did not even resist and agreed to go home with him. Chongming finally relaxed. He felt that he had finally convinced the Yu clan. However, he didn't know that this was the Yu clan's original intention. On the way home, Gu Xingyin sat in the front passenger seat and deliberately provoked Chongming. "Dad, did you really send those two people away?" The last thing Chongming wanted was for someone to mention the Yin family's mother and daughter. However, he urgently needed to ease his relationship with his daughter. At this moment, he could only try his best to suppress the disgust in his heart. "Father has chased them out. Don't worry, Yuji, no one will make you unhappy anymore." Gu Xingyin smiled and nodded. Chongming only thought that she was happy. He didn't know that Gu Xingyin was thinking, "No one will make me unhappy, but soon, there will be many things that will make you unhappy." You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.